6 o'clock on the dot, Monday the 10th of January. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamon and Isabel. We're on your TV and we're on your radio too.
Yeah, don't forget, you can find us now on DAB+. So if you are watching us now at home, whether you're going to work in a moment or off on the school run, don't forget, when you leave the house, you can now take us with you.
You certainly can. Coming up this morning, we're coming for you. That's the warning by the Housing Secretary as he attempts to put pressure on developers to spend money on replacing dangerous cladding. But does that go far enough?
The judge in the Novak Djokovic hearing has extended the injunction against his deportation until 9 a.m. this morning. We'll bring you the very latest.
Morrison's supermarket will remove use-by dates from milk packaging in an attempt to save millions of pints from being wasted. Will you be up for the sniff test? What's that all about? I mean, either it's accurate or it's not accurate. I mean, are they saying, well, we put this use-by test on there for your safety, but actually we're going to take it off because it's sort of made up?
Well, have you ever smelt off milk?
No, you see, I have a problem. Did I not tell you my story about me working on the milk float?
Here we go. You did mention you'd worked on it, yeah?
And curdled milk.
Oh.
And I'm not big into milk.
All right, I love milk, but I have smelt sour milk and it's a no-go. But I think milk lasts a really long time now.
I wouldn't risk it.
We quite often buy the big bottles, and I'm surprised at how long it lasts.
Well, but if they take that tab off, and now you don't know how long it lasts, I mean, I suppose it is back to the old days where you just look at it and are there bits floating in it and then you realise it's curdled.
Yeah.
Or would you actually smell it? And
well, yeah, sometimes you do have to do a sniff test, don't you? But the thing is, milk's changed now. It's not like it was when we were growing up, or at least maybe I don't buy full-fat milk anymore. But when I was growing up, we had the full-fat with the cream on the top.
Yes.
And then you would get the floating bits.
Yes.
Oh, this is really...
But not
Lots of people will be pouring their milk onto their cereal, watching us as we speak. Are you having a sniff? How would you feel about having to sniff your cereal? It's a bit cheesy. Oh, not
no,
very nice.
But in short, I don't believe big business does it for our benefit. Big business does things for its own benefit. So why are they doing this? Are they caring about the environment, about the world, about
money saving, isn't it?
It's always something to do with money, and we're the victims of it. But anyway, use-by dates on milk, or indeed anything else, are they worth the paper they're written on? Here's the news you're waking up to today.
19 people, including 9 children, have been killed in an apartment fire in New York City. 200 firefighters responded to the blaze in the 19-story building, which was started by a malfunctioning electric heater. The city's mayor, Eric Adams, called it one of the worst fires witnessed during modern times.
The judge in the Djokovic hearing has extended the injunction against his deportation until 9 o'clock this morning UK time. The hearing is being temporarily adjourned after government lawyers outlined their responses to Djokovic's arguments. The tennis star is challenging the cancellation of his Australian visa in a case that has drawn worldwide attention.
Rishi Sunak has backed calls to cut the COVID isolation period to 5 days. The Chancellor's among a number of cabinet ministers putting growing pressure on the PM to reduce the requirement from 7. He reportedly believes that it could help reduce staffing shortages caused by the Omicron variant.
Pregnant women are being urged to get their COVID-19 vaccinations as soon as they can to protect their babies. Nearly all pregnant women admitted to hospital with COVID symptoms between May and October last year were unvaccinated. The government says the vaccines are safe for pregnant women and have no impact on fertility.
Buckingham Palace has unveiled the lineup of celebrations to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Street parties, a concert featuring some of the world's biggest stars, and a chance to see the Queen's homes up close are all included. It will mark her 70 years on the throne with a 4-day UK bank holiday weekend from the 2nd to the 5th of June.
Well, that'll be good. Look
can't wait
forward
for that.
to. The dark western Power of the Dog and HBO's Succession were the big winners at the Golden Globes, picking up 3 awards each. There were no guests at this year's ceremony, though, with the winners announced on the website and social media. The decision to stage a private ceremony comes after heavy criticism of the organising body for a lack of diversity. What'd you do over the weekend?
I had a really busy weekend, actually. I went to the pantomime in Guildford on Saturday.
Oh, I have a question for
Yeah.
you. Why does a brown cow, I'm getting back
Here
to
we go.
this milk question
Yeah.
again, give white milk when it only eats green grass?
No idea why.
That's when you go to a panto, that's always
That's
there.
the panto joke.
That's the burning question. What is your suggestion? Did they not do that one?
No, they didn't do that one. I don't think that appears in Dick Whittington. There were lots of cat jokes. My little boy, I mean, we egged him on so much about going to the panto. We said, this is going to be the funniest thing you've ever seen, because he loves slapstick humour. And I think we maybe over-egged it, because when he came out, he said it was really fun, but it wasn't as funny as I thought it was going to be, Mummy. But what I thought was it's funnier than I was expecting. What I realised is panto's all about singing and dancing for the kids, but the humour's just all innuendo for the adults. My husband and I were falling about laughing. But as a child, it's wasted on them. So I really enjoyed the panto.
Yeah,
It's good.
but there is no panto on the planet that wouldn't be better for being at least 15 to 20 minutes shorter.
You're so right, yeah.
Yeah,
Mine
you
were
could
up
take
and
15, 20
fiddling
minutes,
about.
nobody would notice, and we'd all be out and all happier.
It's such a weird British tradition, pantomime, isn't it?
But it keeps the spirits up. I mean, we should thank everybody who's taken part in panto, on stage, behind the stage, getting them together, because to be able to go there just gives you some sort of release, doesn't it?
It's true,
just
but you know
nice.
what? It's a big earner, so don't be thanking them too much. They're coining it in. So many shows they do. Anyway, I should...
I was in panto once.
Were you?
Yeah, I was a mirror.
Were you?
On the wall.
Oh, in...
I was never there. I was in Belfast in the Opera House, the Grand Opera House in Belfast.
Snow White?
And they recorded me, and it was all misty, and then the mist disappears, and it's me, my big face
you
in the
imagine?
mirror. And it was great. Best gig ever.
Yeah, you're getting sort of...
Paid for not being there.
Yeah. Oh, ideal. And
Front pages of the papers, let's have a look at those today. Telegraph, first of all, leading with the Chancellor supporting calls to cut the self-isolation period. We've been reporting on this from 7 to 5 days.
The Tories' levelling up plan is failing on every level, according to the Daily Mirror.
There's the real story. What's going on at Loose Women? That's what people want to know. The Times reports that NHS chiefs are confident that hospitals will avoid another COVID crisis in the coming weeks.
The Guardian is reporting that the Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, is set to unveil a £4 billion package designed to help leaseholders escape the costs of removing combustible cladding.
Going, Cron, front of the Metro as they celebrate the daily drop in COVID case numbers.
Daily Mail is warning Boris Johnson warns Boris Johnson to tackle the cost of living crisis. Otherwise, the party will face a backlash at the polls.
Daily Express also calls on the Prime Minister to get a grip on the cost of living crisis.
Meanwhile, The Independent warns it's harder than ever to stop a terrorist attack in Britain.
Boris Johnson's due to announce his plan by March on how the country will learn to live with COVID, according to the Eye.
And finally, the Daily Star says modern men are so vain after it was reported that they spend more time in the mirror than women. But we know that the Star have nonsense headlines all the time anyway. So.
But that's no bad thing, is it? People being aware of grooming.
Oh, I can't bear vain men. There's
Can you
nothing
not?
worse. Nothing worse than a man that loves looking in the mirror.
No, there's nothing worse than a man who's got hair growing out the top of his nose or his eyebrows are untamed.
That's true, that's true.
Yes.
But I don't think they're talking about them. I think they're talking about these 20-somethings that stand in the mirror just pumping iron and rubbing baby oil and waxing and preening.
Just a
and
normal day
product.
for me.
It's awful.
That's all that is.
Can't bear
No,
it.
but seriously, any man who's got hair coming out his ears or bushy eyebrows has got no one in his life to love him.
That's so true.
Children, parents, partner, whatever it happens to be. Can no one just say... That's when you would say, does he not have a mirror in the house?
Well, no, I think personal grooming is fine. It's when they're sort of lovingly, prolonged periods just doing this. But if you're getting rid of nasal hair, no one's going to complain about that, I don't think. But yeah, are men becoming more vain? Let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, let us know that. Just 9 minutes past 6. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamon and Isabel.
Now, the long nightmare for residents in Grenfell-like tower blocks may be coming to an end, as the Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, is today expected to announce action on developers who've profited from building unsafe homes.
Liam Spender is a spokesman for End Our Cladding Scandal campaign, who are seeking a solution to the building safety crisis. What is the cladding scandal specifically to your campaign, Liam? How does it affect you?
Good morning. So, as you say, since Grenfell more than 4.5 years ago, about 90,000 buildings across the UK have found themselves in this unholy mess of being in buildings that have flammable cladding or have fire safety defects inside the building, things like fire doors that don't work properly, fire alarms that don't work properly, things like that. And they've been trapped and unable to sell. And some of them are facing ruinous bills, hundreds of pounds
Are you
a
one of
month
those
to pay
people,
for fire
Liam?
patrols. I am relatively lucky, so I live in a building under 18 metres with cladding, but we don't have any of the interim measures, at least fingers crossed, not at the moment.
Yeah.
What do you make of these announcements that we're expecting to hear today under the stewardship of Michael Gove? Let me get this right, £4 billion for those in lower-rise buildings. Is this going to be very welcome, do you think?
It's a welcome step in the right direction. Whether the plan to deliver that money building by building is there, we're not sure at the moment, but we're pleased Michael Gove seems to be wanting to resolve the problem, but the devil is in the detail.
Yeah, you say seems to be wanting to resolve the problem. They've got to do the right thing, surely. This is an absolute nightmare. And it's nobody's fault who's bought an apartment or a flat or finds themselves living in one, is it?
Absolutely right. The people living in these buildings are completely innocent, and there seems to have been an awful lot of politics and an awful lot of wrangling with the Treasury over the last 4.5 years, and only now do we seem to be starting on the road to a solution.
I'm just interested, obviously this is a move that will support leaseholders. They're going to be spared paying for this expensive removal of this flammable cladding. Presumably then that cost is going to be passed on to the freeholders, i.e. the developers. And is that right in your view? Or is it actually the fault of the government? I just want to be clear about whether or not these developers have gone up and put cladding up that the government have already told them isn't safe, or has the government just failed to stop it? Where do you stand on that?
I mean, I think it's right that the developers pay the lion's share. They put these buildings up, and where you have the internal defects I mentioned, that can only be the responsibility of the developer, but by choice or by negligence. The government does have a role here. Successive governments have failed to regulate. And whether this $4 billion actually materialises and reaches the people in question is the issue we need to see the detail on.
Yeah, and the people in question are how many?
It could be millions. There's about 76,000 buildings in the UK between 11 and 18 metres tall. So even if you've only got 20 flats per building, you could be looking at 1 or 2 million people.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Liam, just explain to people, I mean, we've heard a lot about it since the tragedy of Grenfell in 2017, but just remind us how it has been for people living in buildings with this cladding, with the fear of having to pay for it, not having the money in the savings to do it, and also knowing that they can't sell their property.
A living nightmare is the easiest way to summarise this. It's a fate you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. The mental health toll of this has been enormous, and the human cost in terms of people delaying having families, not being able to move closer to live with loved ones, having to go back to work when they've retired. It's a catalogue of human misery, and it's shocking that we're more than 4.5 years on from Grenfell, and we're only just starting to see the first glimmer of a solution.
Liam Spender, thanks very much indeed for the update. Good luck in your campaign. Liam is a spokesman for End Our Cladding Scandal. If you're living through this, as Isabel was questioning there, what is your life like? What has this done to you? What is the sense of hopelessness for you, meaning that you can never sell the way things stand, the property that you're in, and just what has that absolutely done to you? You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News as well. There it is on your screen.
Yeah, a really important issue. We're also going to be this morning reflecting on the 40th birthday of the Duchess of Cambridge. Did you see those beautiful pictures that were released over the weekend? Did you notice also the references to Diana in them? Well, we'll be bringing you in for a closer look. That's after the weather. See you in a moment. Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking cold to start in the east with rain and drizzle in the west. Let's take a look at the details. Well, it will be a grey and damp start to the week across southwest England with rain and drizzle, light winds and mild with a high of 12 Celsius.
A chilly morning in the southeast of England with patchy frost and mist. Once any mist clears, there'll be bright spells before cloud builds.
Across Wales, a cloudy and murky morning with widespread rain and drizzle. A milder start than yesterday with a high of 11 Celsius.
Here's the Midlands. Across the Midlands, a cloudy start in the far west with outbreaks of rain and drizzle. Further east, it will be a cooler morning with patchy frost and a high of 8 Celsius.
Okay, let's go to the northeast. A cold morning there with local frost, mist and hill fog. Once any mist clears, there'll be some bright spells for a time before cloud builds in from the west. A generally cloudy and damp start across southern Scotland, but a chance of the odd bright spell in the far east. Winds increasing through the morning, particularly along western coasts.
And here's Northern Ireland. A grey and cloudy morning, patchy rain and drizzle. They'll be becoming more widespread through the day. A mild day with a high of 12 Celsius. It remains cloudy with rain and drizzle spreading eastwards throughout. Windy across the northwest with a risk of gales, and that's how it's shaping up for the rest of the day. Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
GB News and GB Views. These views are yours, and this is about Morrisons saying they're going to dispense with use-by dates. Mark King says, I've been championing best before dates since I started Rogers Wholesale Foods 6 years ago. Our customers have a great understanding of best before dates and the difference between those and use-by dates. It's a great thing and hopefully stops more waste.
Other wholesale providers are available. Keith Garland's got in touch. I will only buy milk and my groceries from a supermarket who uses best before dates, use by dates. If they want my money, they'll have to convince me that their produce is fresh and safe.
Poodle says on Twitter, does this mean shoppers are going to break all the seals on the milk to sniff it? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Grateful I buy long life milk, which lasts months.
Well, that's an interesting point. I mean,
Yes.
you go to continental Europe and all they have really is long
life
life milk, and I can't bear long life milk.
What is that, like a Frankenstein milk, really, when you think about it?
Put into it to make it stay fresh forever.
Do you know my wife brings her own milk to hotels?
No.
Because you know where you get a tea maker, a coffee maker or something. Well, she doesn't use the long life milk.
Oh, right. Yeah,
She's
fair
so
enough. That's quite
strange,
smart.
so
She's
weird.
not.
She brings her own with little cellophane things over the top and an elastic band.
Every time you tell me little quirks about
Weird,
Ruth, I think I like
weird.
her more.
Weird.
We're quite similar.
I mean, people
Kindred spirits.
are worried about how many shoes they'll pack and things. She's worried about
Sure,
how
she
much
does
milk
both.
she
She's
brings.
very organised.
Yeah, with 6 suitcases in tow. Anyway, with the energy price cap set to rise on the 1st of April, millions of you will see your bills rocket.
Yeah, the average annual bill is predicted to increase by £600 and top £2,000 a year. Age UK North Tyneside says older people are going to be disproportionately affected. Let's speak to our North East of England reporter Rachel Sweeney, who can tell us more. Rachel, why is this then? Why do we think that older people will be the hardest hit?
Well, Age UK says that a higher cost of living puts a disproportionate amount of strain on older people. The cost of gas at wholesale, as we've been reporting on GB News, is soaring. That's putting renewed pressure on suppliers. Now, they say that older people have a fixed budget and that they don't have other income to come in, so they're really stuck at the moment. They are at a choice between heat or eat, and that's what they're really concerned about, because cold homes lead to more health problems. Well, Age UK North Tyneside say there's plenty of help out there for older people. I've been speaking to them. Let's see what they have to say.
So from Age UK's perspective, older people aren't alone out there. We are here to help them, and we can help them with either energy advice, so that can be around how to draft-proof their home, how to cut their energy bills by doing simple things like closing their curtains at night time or keeping their radiators clear. But we can also help them with free, impartial and confidential advice around their actual energy costs. So that can be whether or not they've got benefits such as the cold winter payment, or whether or not they're eligible for things like the warm homes discount. There's a lot of ways older people can actually cut their bills.
And then there's this whole question of changing providers, Rachel. As we understand it, older people are more resistant to that. Why?
Well, Age UK says that it's about loyalty and also that they're not as tech savvy. Well, I do have a gentleman with me here who is completely bucking that trend. But let me just tell you first that I did speak to some money-saving experts yesterday who said right now it's best not to change providers and it's best to stick with what you've got until the price cap changes. So joining me now is Clive Embleton. Clive, what do you think about Age UK saying that older people are disproportionately affected because they're not ready to change providers?
Well, that is true, because a lot of older people don't know how to change energy suppliers because they're not tech savvy. They don't go online to check things out. But I urge everybody to do that, because that's what I do. And yeah, I save money not just on energy, but on all my utility bills, telephone, broadband, etc. And it's so easy to do if they've got the internet. All they've got to do is switch on.
Now, older people are more likely to move house, which is something that you've just done, and you took that opportunity to change providers.
I did, yes. When I moved house, my supply that I had at the old address, they were going to double my price, and then I went online, shopped round, and I got an even better deal than I was on before I moved. So, and this was just 2 months ago when this all kicked in.
Now, you're obviously bucking the trend here, but you do work at our local British Legion, and you meet a lot of older people who wouldn't be as savvy as you are. What worry do you have for people when their bills are going up?
I tell them to do what I do. In fact, I had a friend of mine came round to my house last year because he doesn't even have a computer, and I sorted all out for him at my old address. I sorted out for him, and in the end, he stayed with his supplier that he was on at the time because he was on a really good deal. But at least he checked.
Yeah, now this area is, we're all from mining families. It's a former pit village. There's a lot of older people in our area. Do you think that the North East will be hard hit?
I do, yes, because the North East is always hard hit when anything goes on or anything that goes wrong. We're always hard hit up here.
What message do you have for people who are watching thinking, I want to be able to do what he does?
Just get yourself a computer, log on, go compare, whatever it's called, and you'll get a list of choices up and go from there. It's so easy. If you can switch your television on, you can do that.
And Age UK are encouraging anyone to get in touch with support on that. They are there ready to help.
OK, Rachel, good stuff. Thank you very much. Well, stay with us. Coming up on Breakfast, we'll be with our Welsh reporter. She's out and about on your doorstep, finding out what you think about the biggest stories. But first, the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News. Welcome back. The time is 6:27. Let's take a look at today's front pages for you. The Telegraph leading with Chancellor Rishi Sunak supporting calls to cut the self-isolation period from 7 days to 5. The Tories' levelling up plan is failing on every level, according to the Daily Mirror. The Guardian's reporting the Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, is set to unveil a £4 billion package designed to help leaseholders escape costs to remove combustible cladding. Going, Cron is the front of the Metro. They celebrate the daily drop in COVID case numbers. The Daily Mail warns Boris Johnson to tackle the cost of living crisis, otherwise the party will face a backlash at the polls. The Daily Express also calls on the Prime Minister to get a grip on the cost of living crisis. And finally, the Daily Star says modern men are so vain after it was reported that they spend more time in the mirror than women. Well, in the studio to review this morning's papers, I'm joined by Joe Phillips, former spin doctor, and Andre Walker, political commentator. Very good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming in bright and early on this Monday morning. Shall we start with this headline for the Metro this morning? Going, Cron. You know, this is just celebrating 5 days of figures going down. Is it a bit premature? Should we look at a sort of broader picture of month on month, or do you think it's time to celebrate?
Well, before we start, look, you've given me the fruit and her the croissant, so I'm not impressed with that.
Yeah, but how long did you just spend in front of a mirror?
Right.
Yeah, you see, that's
you
a big story of the
absolutely do
day.
not know me at all. OK, fair enough. But this is a little bit of good news because there's been a drop in coronavirus cases. There's been all this concern about Omicron. I have to say, I had it over Christmas, and I don't want to belittle people who've got seriously ill, but it wasn't particularly serious for me.
Triple vaxxed?
Not vaxxed at all.
Oh, interesting. OK.
Yeah, do you know what? I just never got round to it.
Right, OK.
But actually, I think that there was really big concern about this whole Delta virus and that the Omicron might be even worse. And actually, that appears not to be the case. So I think, fingers crossed, we're getting over it, aren't we?
Hopefully. I mean, do you see the positivity in this?
Yes, I mean, I
cautious
think,
optimism?
I think we'll be guided by science. Whether or not the government is, that remains to be seen. But yes, it does seem as though the severity of the illness is not as bad as had been feared. The big question, of course, is can the NHS cope? And figures out today suggest that actually the winter pressure is no worse at the moment than it was 3 or 4 years ago, pre-COVID. So actually, yes, I think Andre's right. We have got something to be positive to think about. and we need to think about how we live with it.
Yeah. I mean, this fortnight is traditionally the busiest time of the year for the NHS, regardless of COVID. And if we are coping, as you say, reason to be positive. I suppose a big question is whether or not we do need to change the isolation period. Rishi Sunak's now come out saying he'd be in support of it. I think Nadeem Sahawi said that he would if it was approved by the regulators. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think, again, it makes sense if people are not ill to actually not keep them at home unnecessarily. And, the disruption it causes and the shortage of staff, whether it's for trains, NHS, schools, whatever, it has a knock-on on absolutely everybody else. So it does seem to me that it would make sense if there is no risk. I mean, this is the week when we will get the figures from Christmas and New Year, of course. So that is quite crucial to see what the figures are like in infections and severity of infections during that mingling period.
But the disruption, I mean, it's real. We've had 2 cases this morning. Our floor manager and one of our directors have gone straight home upon testing on arrival with positive cases. So
But isn't one of the problems with that? I mean, I shouldn't slag off my brother, but he's one of these people who tests himself every day and is really obsessive about it. And actually, he tested positive, and I thought to myself, and I know it's an awful thing to say, to what extent would it have mattered if he'd have not bothered testing, never knew he had it, and whatever, if he's symptoms-free?
Well, it sort of depends where he's going, though, doesn't it, Andre? I mean, it depends what he does for a
job.
job.
Well, let me say this to you, Joe. If you think about it, we were talking a few days ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, about the NHS, and we're saying all these NHS bodies are declaring emergencies. These are people who've woken up perfectly well, tested positive for coronavirus, and are not going into work as a result. And then, of course, what people turn around and say is, well, the solution to that is then, let's have a national lockdown. And you think, no, the solution is...
They're saying they should isolate if they test positive because they could make very vulnerable people ill.
There were people a week or two ago who were saying that because the NHS was in crisis, because people were staying at home having tested positive, we should have another national lockdown.
I think they were in the minority.
Yeah, I mean, I
get that.
Suggest your brother should stay at home because he should be in a lockdown. Look, I want to move on because there's lots of interesting stuff in the papers this morning. You've chosen, Joe, a story about Russia. They're warning NATO. There's this big meeting going on tomorrow between Russia and the States. It's the front of the FT. Tell us more.
That's right. So NATO stands ready for conflict in Europe. This is Jens Stoltenberg, who's NATO's Secretary-General. And he's really warning Moscow to abandon its foreign policy, which is based on belligerence and sabre-rattling. I mean, they've got 100,000 troops amassed on the border with Ukraine. And there are fears, and that's been building, right up through Christmas. In fact, I think Andre and I talked before, when we were here over the Christmas period, about whether there was going to be any sort of invasion during that period. Well, that hasn't happened. 100,000 troops is an awful lot of people ready to move. We know Putin wants to stay in power. We know he loves being very muscular. But this warning from NATO is possibly more important than a warning from Liz Truss, I think, might have a little bit more impact.
OK, and obviously Ukraine wants to join NATO, and this is what's upsetting Russia, and they're showing their dissatisfaction by sticking a bunch of troops on the border. What do you think about it all?
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, we've wanted Georgia and Ukraine in NATO for some time. There's been this NATO expansion. Of course, the big problem is, the bit people forget when you hear people saying we're parking our tanks in Putin's lawn and all this sort of stuff, these are independent countries who didn't want to be part of the Soviet Union, were badly abused during the Soviet Union. You look at Ukraine, the famine in Ukraine was an absolute catastrophe. Significant percentage of the population end up dying. And of course, this idea that just because they used to be in the Soviet Union, they should now always be in Russia's sphere of influence. They're joining the EU and they're joining NATO because they can't stand the Kremlin. And you can't get away from that fact.
Yeah, we can't really argue with that. Let's turn our attention then to the cost of living crisis. The big story, I think, of 2022. I think COVID, as we can see in the front of the Metro, is almost going out, isn't it? And the cost of living coming in is the big story. What's the Mail's take on it today, Andre?
Yeah, well, there's been 3 former ministers who've been complaining. My favourite, of course, is Lord Frost, who I think was brilliant in the Brexit negotiations, only recently left office, basically saying that, look, inflation is running at, what is it today, 5.1%, whatever. We've got inflation going up. These energy costs are unbelievable. We're all obsessed with the green agenda, but these windmills cost an absolute fortune. And, of course, people's energy prices are going up in a way that energy never used to be a thing. We talk about fuel poverty now all the time. And genuinely, we're talking now about banning foie gras and banning fur coats, which may or may not be useful. But actually, a Conservative government, says Esther McVey, should be much more concerned concerned about the genuine issue of cutting taxes, reducing the level of government, getting out of this economic crisis and cutting fuel prices.
So is that what needs to happen then? We need to sacrifice the planet on the
Well,
altar of
no,
keeping
and I
people's
think
home
this is the danger, that there's an awful lot of people who go, oh, net zero, it's costing a fortune. Actually, this government and the government previously have failed and failed again over years to create enough storage space for gas, which would have protected us against some of these shortages. They haven't invested in alternative forms of energy. They were warned, several years ago that we needed more gas storage facilities, that we needed to invest in renewables, and we needed to think about how we build houses, offices and other places, with solar panels and make them more efficient. This would be a terrible shame if this becomes a row about, it's green or Granny's going to freeze.
Yes.
And that actually isn't the story. No, hang on a second, because, Boris Johnson told everybody in 2016, leaving the EU, we can cut VAT. Well, he hasn't so far, and OK, it's only 5%.
Well, he's saying now it's a blunt instrument, isn't he? And that the people with the biggest homes and the wealthiest actually end up benefiting from that, and there are better ways of doing it.
But at the same time, they give the government, or us, the taxpayer, give an amount of money each year, £300, I think it is, to all pensioners as the winter fuel allowance, regardless of whether they're millionaires or on the poverty line. So, you can't use that argument. Yeah. If you said, one of the reasons for Brexit is so we can cut VAT, well, then cut it.
You can't get away from the fact that we have had since 2010, as far as I'm concerned, no disrespect to your old party, Joe, a Liberal Democrat government. Every single manifesto pledge in the Liberal Democrat manifesto ends up going through. The genuine Conservative principles don't appear to be of any interest to people. And then you get into the situation that we had with Tata Steel, where people are manning the barricades saying, isn't it terrible that Tata Steel's gone bust? This is moving to a green economy. Tata Steel was taxed out of existence because it was a high polluter. So what we do instead is we make all this steel now in China, in even more polluting factories, and import it to the UK. It's madness.
Do you not think that a green agenda is a Conservative agenda? I mean, traditionally they have been a party of sort of stewardship of the planet, so not necessarily unconservative, pro-environment.
Well, when I worked in local government, I have to say I wasn't bothered about carbon. I was bothered about turning the lights off so we could keep the taxes down. But anyway, I think that in terms of preservation of the country, the Conservatives are strong on this. But look, in terms of turning everything into a windmill, in terms of exporting all of our industry to more polluting parts of the world, including China, and let me just say to you, what we have been doing for years with our rubbish is that we have been avoiding landfill tax by sending it to the third world in order to get stuck in a hole anyway and then lie about it.
Yeah, look, I want to finish on The Sun on a bit of an uplifting story, and this is the story about the Platinum Jubilee dessert competition. Bake Off is their headline, which I absolutely love. Take me through it then, Jo.
Well, it's great. I mean, some of us will remember, I don't know, it might divide the nation. Coronation chicken, you like it or not? All of us have probably had some nasty experience. So the coronation chicken, Victoria sponge. Now, this is a competition. Not very long to go. I think it's early February. You've got to get your ideas in. Mary Berry is one of the judges and the chef from Buckingham Palace. Come up with an idea for a pudding to celebrate Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee.
I love it. I am such a terrible cook, though. That won't include me. Look, I want to bring in some breaking news before I let you go and get some reaction to it. We're just hearing from Australia. Of course, we've been waiting for the verdict on this. Well, Novak Djokovic, of course, the international tennis star, he has won his appeal against a decision to refuse him a visa in the Federal Circuit Court of Australia ahead of the Australian Open. So just some reaction then to that. What do you make of that, Andre?
Well, I think there's two issues. I think the one issue is if he has got a medical exemption and it's genuine, then I think he ought to be treated fairly. What this is all about is this is all about the fact that he is not in favour of vaccinations in general, and they're effectively, for political reasons, banning him on health grounds. And I think that is completely unfair.
OK, the medical exemption that he was arguing is, of course, that he had COVID on December 16th. Very controversially, we saw pictures of him over the weekend mixing with people. Yeah. Bitter taste in a lot of people's mouths this morning. Not an awful lot of support from everyone.
No, but I think it's been handled badly. I think it's going to be embarrassing for the Australian government.
Well, because this result's very embarrassing.
Because as Andre says, whatever you think, and personally I think, he should have been vaccinated, he should have been played by the rules. But, you know, whatever you think, they've handled it badly. You know, they kept him, you know, under some sort of questioning thing for several hours, stuck him in this dreadful hotel. Now he knows what the rest of the world feels like. But for people in Australia who've played by the rules...
Yeah. Well, he was in a detention centre where I believe there were some people who'd been in there for 9 years awaiting hearings. And he was then, the judge asked if he could be moved to a hotel with a tennis court. And it does smack a little bit of one rule for me, another rule for the rest of us. Really good to have you both with me this morning. Thank you so much to Andre Walker and Joe Phillips. And you'll have Eamon for the next pay-per-view in an hour's time.
So, as you're seeing on your screens there, Novak Djokovic, the world #1 tennis player, he has won that appeal against a decision to refuse him a visa in the Federal Circuit Court of Australia ahead of the Australian Open. That's the latest news. The long nightmare for residents in Grenfell-like tower blocks may be coming to an end as the Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, is expected to announce action on developers who have profited from building unsafe homes. Our London reporter Alice Porter is outside Grenfell Tower, and that's where the cladding crisis story sadly all began, Alice. Well, obviously Alice is there, but obviously we can't get her sound as of yet. But there will be a government decision on that at about 9 o'clock today, and straight back to Alice when we can get those sound issues sorted out. GB News has been out and about and speaking to you on your doorsteps to find out what matters to you most and what you think about these stories of the day. We're going to Wales now. Our reporter there, Lily Hewitson, is in Monmouth for us this morning. Let's hope we've got better luck with her microphone. Lily, can you hear me? Can I hear you?
Yes, I can hear you, Eamon. Good morning. It's lovely to see you on the breakfast programme. Yes, I'm in Monmouth for you today, just 2 miles from the border in between England and Wales. It's a beautiful market town here, and I'm going to be talking about that border in particular and how it affects people who live and work here. Of course, here in Monmouth, we are in Wales. There's a certain set of restrictions here, but just a couple of miles down the road, different restrictions, because that's where the border is, just in between England and Wales. And we're going to be having a chat to Derval this morning. I've been told she is the lady to talk to here in Monmouth. A bit more about what it's like to live and work here in particular. So we're going to ring the bell on her doorstep this morning. Let's hope she is in and awake. And it doesn't look like she is. Good morning, Derval. How are you?
Good.
Thank you so much for having us on your doorstep this morning.
That's
really
all right.
do appreciate it. It's lovely to see you. Firstly, just want to ask you, so the people at home know a little bit more about you and Monmouth in particular.
Okay.
How long have you been living here and what's it like?
4.5 years. And as I'm from Sligo, West Ireland, so it's very similar. Very nice community, small, and they've been great. We loved it, myself and my daughter. We moved here in 2017, so I'm still here. So I must like it.
Yeah, you must indeed. So your daughter's actually in university in London, isn't she? So tell me a little bit about what that's been like, because obviously she's only over the border.
Yeah.
But, you know, different restrictions there for her. What was it like over Christmas?
Now, this year, difficult again, because they've just come back down, and obviously they've had freedom up there. They come over here and they have to put on the masks and whatever. But we have had all this from the start, because she went up, I think she was there 2 weeks in London, got 2 weeks freedom, and then the lockdown kicked in. So it was very restrictive for them. And also they had just left, you know, their first year in uni. So, yeah, no, she coped well. She coped well. But it is difficult for people coming in, because if you go to Hereford or you go over the road, you don't have to wear a mask. You don't have to, you know, we have some, like 7 in the shop now. We have to wear masks on public transport. And that's fine. But it is confusing. That's the only problem, you know, we find.
That's what I was going to ask you, because you manage the charity shop, which is just around the corner from here. So what's that been like during the pandemic? Because I'm sure that you get people kind of travelling over the border, you know, often every day to come into your shop. But there's people here in Wales too. So what's it like with the customers?
Well, the signs are up. They're quite aware, most people. But unfortunately, you do get the odd one, you know. And we do supply masks. We do kind of advise them politely. But that's all you can do. And it is confusing, because, as I said, you can take a bus over to Hereford, and next thing you don't have to wear a mask. And, you know, there's not restrictions on how many in each store. But that's OK. We've coped with it, I think, well.
And you've also got family in Ireland and some family in Italy as well. So you're kind of across everything, you know, Ireland, Wales, England and Italy. So what's that been like? What's the family makeup like?
It's been difficult because obviously we couldn't travel. I haven't been home since March last year. And I have been in contact with Skype. We've obviously, you know, telephones and we FaceTime. But my sister in Italy did have a rough time because it was northern Italy. So they didn't get the vaccines as soon as we did. And she had underlying conditions. So it took quite a while. I think I got my first one last March and she'd only been vaccinated last January, which was quite... So she was in isolation for quite some time. And, you know, it's tough. It's tough for anybody to do that. But like that, we all had to do it here, you know. So it was hard. It was hard.
Certainly. So obviously you're across the restrictions on both sides of the borders. Who do you think has got it right? Because you're probably across what Drakeford's doing and also Boris Johnson as well.
I think we're done well in Wales. I think we've done really well. I think we've had to protect ourselves. We have to, you know, we have to look after ourselves. We don't know enough about it yet. I know it's tough and I know it's not fun, but I do think sometimes the English were a bit lax quicker than we were here. But I think it's worked well, you know.
And something that's changed just while we've been on air in the last couple of minutes is that Djokovic has won his appeal. Now, tennis, this is something you're across. What do you think about the whole situation with him in Australia at the moment?
Well, one, I think if you have to travel, like I haven't been home personally. I will go soon. But it was because I wasn't vaccinated. They've had the passports in place there for a long time. But I do think that if he has strong personal issues, that's fair enough. But I think he also has a responsibility to everyone, you know, to show, especially in the public eye, with what's going on. I do feel that, you know, if he's travelling to a different country, he has to respect that. They have their passports in place and there's a reason for that, you know.
Well, thank you so much for having us on your doorstep this morning, Derval. It's been absolutely lovely to see you. And everyone in Monmouth was telling me how great you are.
Oh, really?
So you were the lady to talk to, so I'm really pleased. So do stay tuned with us on the Breakfast programme this morning here in Monmouth. We're going to be speaking to more people, more business people, about what it's like to live and work on the border here with those different restrictions here in Wales and different restrictions just down the road in England.
Getting their doorbell rung, a little bell on the front of the door by you at a quarter to seven, in the morning. Very, very nice.
Face to answer the door to. Thanks, Lily.
Lily's saying, what the hell's he talking about? He's no idea what we're on about there, but anyway.
We're talking milk this morning,
Yes,
aren't we?
do you get a milk person, a milkman?
I wish we did.
No. I think it's a lovely thing.
Yeah, me too.
Especially when they deliver you bottles of orange juice as well.
Oh, no.
And yogurts and eggs.
Oh, gosh. I didn't know they did all that. I don't even think there is a milkman where I live. Maybe there is. But no, I get it myself. I walk to the little shop, get my pint or whatever.
I always think it's out of proportion, you know, when you do your groceries and something like milk is so heavy in comparison.
And cold.
Yeah, so that's why you should have it delivered. I think.
Bring back the milkman. Let's start a GB News campaign.
Well, anyway, Morrison's, the supermarket, they're getting rid of use-by dates, which are on. It's obviously it's milk cartons, it's milk. What else do you have? Yeah, well, those things. What's that called?
I don't know what you'd call that. A bottle.
Well,
don't know.
No. Do they have them on bottles? That's the question. On real bottles. So basically, they're saying, you know, use your own judgment on this. Now, I can't really see the reason of this. They'll say it's something environmental or.
There's lots of waste. There's lots and lots of waste. So
what are the things we waste most often? Food.
I've no idea.
Bread, potatoes, and milk.
How do you know that?
Because I read it this morning.
I'm telling you, I'm not up for a sniff test. It makes me feel a bit sick, the thought of it. Let us know your thoughts this morning.
There's not many things I like sniffing. Ruth's got a nice candle in the toilet, which is nice. It's a sort of orange mandarin.
I've smelt it, yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, downstairs, yeah, it's very nice. I love a scented candle myself, and I love the smells of cooking and
but
things
not
like that,
curdled
but
milk.
not nasty smells. We don't want to be doing
we
that.
Don't want
Thank you,
that.
Morrison's. We're not.
So this best before date will remain on their milk, but it will encourage you to check the product and stop pints being poured down the drain. So best before, but not used by.
I don't think there should be best before dates, though. I think use by is fine. If you're going to catch some sort of nasty E. coli or something from eating it, fair enough, warn me. But then it's up to the consumer, surely, to decide to eat it when they want to eat it.
Do you know what it's very hard to get at a supermarket? A nice orange.
Yeah.
Oranges are always too hard because they've been 6 months in cold storage or something.
Fruit in general, just to get it ripe enough.
Fruit in general, just to get it right.
Avocados.
Yes.
difficult to get them perfectly ripe. Even when they say perfectly ripe, quite often you don't know. And I was hearing one pub has to buy so many avocados, something like 10 avocados, to guarantee one ripe one, that they've stopped serving avocado on their menu because it was just not cost effective anymore.
I once on my Twitter account put out a picture of the various devices that my wife has for denutting. Is that what you do with them? What do you do?
Deseeding, denutting.
Deseeding an avocado. Honestly, it's like a torture chamber. She accuses me of not putting receptacles from the dishwasher back in the right place, but I don't even know what these things are. But there are so many things to denut an avocado.
My top tip for getting avocado out of its skin is to get a spoon or a glass. And you just use a glass and the whole thing comes out in one.
It has to be soft, though.
Oh, yeah, it has to be ripe. Yeah. But, I mean, that's...
I don't eat them.
Oh, remember, you said you don't like a smashed avocado.
No, wouldn't be my favourite.
Never mind.
Do you know what's nice?
Yeah.
Banana on toast.
I love banana on toast with a bit of cinnamon sprinkled on
you see, these are the sort of things that you need to sing the praises of. People are now at home saying, banana on toast, that's a very good idea, and I may have that for breakfast.
Have you eaten some this morning? Because we're out of our bananas from the fruit bowl. All gone.
It's early yet. Matter of fact, it's 10 minutes to 7.
It is.
You're listening and watching Eamon and Isabel on GB News. A couple of stories now which really concerned me overnight, and just wanted to draw people's attention to these. And these are related to children, because police are looking for a woman who they say tried to lure an 8-year-old boy away from his family at Waterloo Station in London. I think we've got pictures of her here. It's reported she then tried to engage the child in sexual activity.
Yeah, if you're listening on the radio, we're showing the CCTV from the station. According to British Transport Police, the woman made the comments to the boy at around 8 p.m. on the 22nd of December. She's wearing a yellow puffer jacket and has long brown hair. And in a separate incident in Cheshire, a man's been arrested on suspicion of child abduction after a 4-year-old girl was approached in a pub in Middlewich. The man there was challenged by a parent after he approached the young girl again at 8 o'clock, this time on a Saturday. He was then detained by other members of the public until police arrived. So the thing about this, I just find, just really scary. Really, really scary. People say, oh, children are safe and this is that. And then you get 2 incidents within days of each other of adults trying to just lure children into their company. Just so scary. Yeah, really scary. As a parent, it appeals to my most basic instincts to just panic. But I have to just remind myself, the vast majority of population are good people, and these are just very, very rare. Don't let your child out of your sight, really, is what I would say there. The long nightmare for residents in Grenfell-like tower blocks may be coming to an end, as the Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, is expected at 9 o'clock today to announce action on developers who have profited from building unsafe homes. Yes, earlier we spoke to Liam Spender. He's a spokesman for End Our Cladding Scandal campaign about what it all means for their campaign.
Say since Grenfell more than 4.5 years ago, about 90,000 buildings across the UK have found themselves in this unholy mess of being in buildings that have flammable cladding or have fire safety defects inside the building, things like fire doors that don't work properly, fire alarms that don't work properly, things like that. And they've been trapped and unable to sell, and some of them are facing ruinous bills, hundreds of pounds. Are you one of those people, Liam? I am relatively lucky, so I live in a building under 18 metres with cladding, but we don't have any of the interim measures, at least fingers crossed, not at the moment. Whether the plan to deliver that money building by building is there, we're not sure at the moment, but we're pleased Michael Gove seems to be wanting to resolve the problem, but the devil is in the detail. Just pay the lion's share. They put these buildings up, and where you have the internal defects I mentioned, that can only be the responsibility of the developer, but by choice or by negligence. The government does have a role here. Successive governments have failed to regulate. Whether this 4 billion actually materialises and reaches the people in question is the issue. The human cost in terms of people delaying having families, not being able to move, closest to live with loved ones, having to go back to work when they've retired. It's a catalogue of human misery, and it's shocking that we're more than 4.5 years on from Grenfell, and we're only just starting to see the first glimmer of a solution.
You know, it's so poignant talking about Grenfell because we pass it every day to and from work all the time. And just always what I think is a scandal. We talk about foreign aid in this country. And you think if ever there was a need for Theresa May as Prime Minister at the time to say, right, this is not a council problem, this is a national problem. We send in people, we get these people under canvas or in porta cabins or whatever it happens to be. All these years on, and so many of those people are still in temporary accommodation.
Either it's safe or it's not safe. And there are so many people living in unsafe conditions because the cladding's still there and they can't afford to.
What have we learnt? What have we learnt from that?
It is such a big scandal. I remember it very clearly because I was presenting a breakfast programme from outside Grenfell the morning after. Something I'll take with me for the rest of my life. It was just so awful. And of course, everybody was watching those images as it unfolded. And
what you can't get on television or radio, because I always remember this with certain events I've covered, bomb blasts and things, is the smell.
I didn't even want to go there, but yeah, the smell was very... And I actually was newly pregnant at the time, so your smell is really heightened. And I really remember the smell, sort of acrid smoke and watching the helicopter circling, trying to douse the building, and it smouldered for days and days, and if not weeks.
Yeah. You know, but we bring it forward to today. What is Michael Gove going to announce at 9 o'clock today? We will bring it to you as soon as that happens. But if you've got a story to tell, if you're living through that nightmare, living in a home with unsafe cladding that you can't sell, that you can't get rid of, that is like a ball and chain around your foot, please do get in touch. There's how you do it. gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us as well at gbnews.
Coming up at 7 o'clock, we're going to be talking about school exclusion zones. Should anti-vaxxers be banned from hanging around outside the school gates? We'll be debating that after the weather. See you in a moment. Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking cold to start in the east with rain and drizzle in the west. Let's take a look at the details. Well, it will be a grey and damp start to the week across southwest England with rain and drizzle, light winds and mild with a high of 12 Celsius.
A chilly morning in the southeast of England with patchy frost and mist. Once any mist clears, there'll be bright spells before cloud builds.
Across Wales, a cloudy and murky morning with widespread rain and drizzle. A milder start than yesterday with a high of 11 Celsius.
Here's the Midlands. Across the Midlands, a cloudy start in the far west with outbreaks of rain and drizzle. Further east, it will be a cooler morning with patchy frost and a high of 8 Celsius.
Okay, let's go to the northeast. A cold morning there with local frost, mist and hill fog. Once any mist clears, there'll be some bright spells for a time before cloud builds in from the west. A generally cloudy and damp start across southern Scotland, but a chance of the odd bright spell in the far east. Winds increasing through the morning, particularly along western coasts.
And here's Northern Ireland. A grey and cloudy morning, patchy rain and drizzle, though becoming more widespread through the day. A mild day with a high of 12 Celsius. It remains cloudy with rain and drizzle spreading eastwards throughout. Windy across the northwest with a risk of gales, and that's how it's shaping up for the rest of the day. Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning to you. It's exactly 7 o'clock. It's a Monday morning, the 10th of January. Breakfast on GB News with Eamon and Isabel. Not only on television, but also you're listening to us on radio as well, DAB+.
Yes, remember, if you're watching us before you head off to work or on the school run, don't forget when you leave the house, you can take us with you on your radio. Coming up this morning.
We are coming for you. That's the warning by the Housing Secretary as he attempts to put pressure on developers to spend money on replacing dangerous cladding.
From today, 100,000 critical workers will be given daily lateral flow tests to help keep essential services open. We'll let you know who's eligible.
The world number one men's tennis player Novak Djokovic has successfully won an appeal against a decision to refuse him a visa in the Federal Circuit Court of Australia ahead of the Australian Open on January 17th. That news just coming in the last 20 minutes. So Djokovic has won that appeal. And Australia's Federal Circuit Court has quashed the government's decision to cancel his visa. So he's now free to play. The court has ordered for the world's top-ranked tennis player to be released from immigration detention immediately. However, the federal government's council said that ministerial powers could be invoked to cancel Djokovic's visa. Where are we at with this?
It's never-ending.
It's a federal and state sort of situation
Huge row,
going on.
International row as well. Lots of supporters of the tennis star have been camped outside his hotel. Many of them had moved outside the courthouse, and we're hearing it's a real sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Festival atmosphere, dancing,
carnival.
Singing, carnival, exactly, holding pictures of the star celebrating. At the moment, as things stand, the judge taking his view that he can now and is now free to go and play on the 17th of January in the US Open. Whether or not that will happen, what the other players will make of it all remains to be seen. And of course, this follows on from the controversy over the weekend when his legal team said on the 16th of December he had tested positive for COVID, but pictures of him in crowds with many people, including children, the day after emerged in the public eye. Do you think that he is above the rules? Should he have been isolating?
Well, I think what's happening here is this is reflecting the whole argument that is actually going on in real life outside sport. So it is. So this gives fuel to the fire on this whole subject. And of course, we want your views on all of this, and we'll be reflecting that throughout the programme. We want to now move to the Grenfell fallout, long nightmare for residents in not only Grenfell we're talking about, but the properties that have been built like them, tower blocks, apartments, flats. Well, it may be coming to an end, we hear, because Michael Gove is expected at 9 o'clock to announce action on developers who have profited from building unsafe homes.
Well, let's cross to our London reporter, Alice Porter. She is outside Grenfell Tower for us. Alice, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Look, of course, take us back, first of all, to where this all began. Awful, awful tragedy happening in the capital here in 2017.
Yeah, that's right. It's hard to believe that it was 4.5 years ago when the Grenfell Tower fire disaster happened, killing the lives of 72 people back in June of 2017. Now, of course, this on its own was a really horrific tragedy. But on top of that, what it did was expose a massive housing scandal across the country. And that was that there was flammable cladding and other fire safety defects which were found in tens of thousands of blocks across the country. Now, the government has promised to remove the cladding from those top high-rise buildings, but up until now the cost went to leaseholders for people who were living in flats that were between sort of 11 metres and 18 metres. The cost fell on them, and the problem with removing this cladding is it costs billions and billions of pounds, and the problem is obviously nobody really wants to pay it. Now, hundreds of thousands of people are still living in these blocks, and I think that's what's really crucial to say, and they're of course paying huge service charges. Their insurance premiums have gone up, they're unable to remortgage or sell their properties, they're having to pay for fire wardens 24/7 to patrol outside their buildings in case their building catches on fire. I mean, you know, this psychological toll that takes on people as well as the financial one is really significant. So I think there will be many people today who will be delighted by this news.
OK, and we're expecting a big announcement this morning from Michael Gove that will benefit leaseholders specifically.
Yeah, that's right. So Michael Gove, the Housing Secretary, he's got a team of forensic accountants together, and effectively they're going to be tracking down developers who are responsible for these fire risk buildings, really. And he's going to attempt to get £4 billion from these developers. So crucially, the money to remove this cladding will be coming from these developers and not from the leaseholders. But he's also going to be announcing changes to make it easier for people to sell their properties if they're sort of stuck in this type of accommodation. And he's also promised that he'll be sort of sitting down with developers and encouraging them, and I quote, to do the right thing by getting involved with this scheme. But if he says that if no solution is reached, then he'll promise to bring in a solution in law.
So, Alice, does this bring the problem to an end, the impasse that people have had not being able to shift their properties? The developers really have to play ball, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And the question is, are they going to play ball? I mean, this is just a sort of voluntary basis sort of initially. I mean, it's all very well Michael Gove sort of saying, you know, wanting people to do the right thing. Well, a lot of developers haven't done the right thing up until now. And it's all very well saying that the solution may be brought in law. But that could take years of wranglings in courts, and it's already been 4.5 years. So it will be interesting to see what happens with developers if they don't play ball on this. And in terms of who this is going to help, this is really good news if you are in an apartment block where it's only cladding is the issue. The problem is this new measures today, they don't address all the other fire safety issues such as sort of fire doors, etc. And that's a really big part of the problem. Cladding often gets the sort of the main headline, but actually there are lots of other sort of fire safety issues, and that's not being addressed today. And of course, people who have been living in these flats, who've been paying so many charges, they're not going to be reimbursed for that. So it's for those people, they're not waking up today and it's a completely new world. They've also been through so much financially, and it is important to stress that whilst the developers, there are lots of questions that do need to be asked about the way that they have acted in the buildings that have been put together, but at the same time I think a lot of critics have said this is partly due to successive governments deregulating the industry, and there are some questions to be asked in regards to that. But look, this is an important step, and this will be some good news for many people across the country, but there's still a long way to go for many people who have had more than 4.5 years of absolute hell.
And Alice, as you mentioned, there's so many other issues. It's not just the cladding, as brought to light by that terrible fire overnight in New York, which we'll be reporting on later in the programme as well. So look, at 9 o'clock, certainly we'll be back with you getting reaction to what the Housing Secretary has to say about all of that. Meanwhile, just in Australia, we just want to bring you up to date on what has happened there, because Novak Djokovic has won his appeal against deportation from Australia. But again, Isabel, it's just not as simple as that.
No, the argument is still raging. So, of course, the Australian Open is happening on the 17th of January. He wants to play. He hoped that his exemption would mean he could. The Border Force said that he couldn't play because his exemption was not valid. He's now won that appeal. So the government have been defeated, and they've said his visa can be reinstated. But But now it appears that ministers could actually overturn the federal court decision and invoke ministerial powers to cancel his visa, and then he wouldn't be allowed back into Australia for 3 years. So this row is now going to escalate further. As I say, the courts have found in favour of Djokovic that he can have his visa reinstated, but ministerial powers could still overturn the courts, which in itself, to us, seems quite shocking.
I suppose the state powers will overrule the federal powers, so that's an amazing situation. Not only would he be deported, but not allowed into the country and therefore to play in the tournament again for 3 years.
Yeah, which obviously he won't want, and it will be a big question mark about what he wants to do next. What will be the next move? At the moment, it looks like a bit of a deuce as far as I can work out in tennis terms.
That New York story, which we were telling you about, a tower block on fire there overnight, an apartment block. 19 people now, including 9 children, have been killed in that fire in New York City. 200 firefighters responded to the blaze. It's a 19-storey building. It was started by what the authorities are saying, a malfunctioning electric heater.
The city's mayor, Eric Adams, called it one of the worst fires witnessed during modern times.
Rishi Sunak has backed calls to cut the COVID isolation period to 5 days. The Chancellor is amongst a number of cabinet ministers putting growing pressure on the Prime Minister to reduce the requirement from 7. He believes that it could help reduce staffing shortages caused by the Omicron variant.
Pregnant women are being urged to get their COVID-19 vaccinations as soon as they can to protect their babies. Nearly all pregnant women admitted to hospital with COVID symptoms between May and October last year were unvaccinated. The government says the vaccines are safe for pregnant women and they have no impact on fertility.
Buckingham Palace has unveiled a lineup of celebrations to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Street parties, a concert featuring some of the world's biggest stars, and a chance to see the Queen's homes up close are all included. It'll mark her 70 years on the throne with a 4-day UK bank holiday weekend from the 2nd to the 5th of June. Get that one in your diary.
OK, back to school time is continuing with all the talk of hybrid learning, mask wearing, staff shortages. How are parents feeling in this second week of the term? Are you anxious, optimistic, pessimistic? Well, let's speak to one of our punters. Liam Hunt is a father of 3 from York, and he joins us now to tell us how he's getting on. Oh, in fact, it's a show and tell. Not only are we describing you as a father, but we can see the evidence as well. Very good morning to you, Liam. How's week 1 gone? How are you feeling about it all?
I'm furious actually with the whole mask situation. I want to know what the justification is for it, because there's not a shred of evidence that they make any difference regarding transmission. But there's so much evidence that they cause harm to children. And create anxiety, keep us in a state of fear.
Oh, bless you.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
What's your little one's name, Liam?
It's Ryan.
Ryan, bless you, Ryan.
Ryan's a little mini me there.
A little mini me. Look, I just wanted to pick up on this because it's something the Education Secretary's been talking about over the weekend, and he was asked exactly where the evidence was for face masks, and he said that the government took evidence from the UK Health and Security Agency. SAGE provided evidence, and they did their own observational study of 123 schools, and this was in relation to mask wearing with the Delta variant, and he said that given that Omicron was a quantum more infectious than Delta, that he felt it was a risk worth taking, but as soon as he could, he said they wouldn't be wearing masks a day longer than necessary. Do you feel reassured by that from the Education Secretary?
Not at all, because there's 40 years of research evidence that can proves that masks have little effect, if any, and actually they could promote infection. And, like I said, the harms of wearing them, socially, they get in the way of learning, development, and just keep people in a state of fear.
Okay.
Well, okay. Thanks for expressing your fears, your concerns, and your anger at a lot of this. Thank you to you, Liam, and to Ryan, two of our viewers and listeners here for GB Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel. From today, 100,000 critical workers will be given daily lateral flow tests to help keep essential services open. And we go to our East of England reporter Amelia Harper at Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Service with more on this. Amelia, over to you.
Good morning, Eamon. Well, yes, we're here at Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Service because fire control staff are among the 100,000 critical workers that have been identified by the Prime Minister for this daily testing scheme. We're inside the main area where fire crews will come in and out. So if a fire bell does go off, we are going to have to deal with that live on air, but that is no problem at all. Now, this all comes amid staffing shortages across many different sectors across the UK. Last week, we topped over 200,000 COVID cases for the first time in the UK. But it is not just for people in food processing, border force and national security. It also is eligible for people in police and fire service control rooms. We're here obviously in the main area where these fire engines are, but they do have their control room just further down the site as well. But it is also for people in electricity related jobs and also in COVID warehouses and surge labs. But now let's talk to Matt Blanchard. Now, Matt has taken a COVID test for us this morning as part of this scheme. Matt, just tell us, are we in the clear?
We are. It's good news. Yeah, it's a negative test. Thank you.
Brilliant, Matt. Morning, Matt. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Brilliant. So just tell us what you think about this scheme. How important is it? You're an emergency service that you are out on the road saving lives.
Yes, so testing for us is a really useful control measure because it enables us to keep our staff safe, so we prevent outbreaks of the virus on stations. And that's really important because it enables us to provide our emergency response, so these appliances behind you can actually respond to those incidents. And it's also important for the public that they have confidence that our staff are tested regularly, so when we interact with them at operational incidents, and also when we carry out our important fire prevention and protection work, they know that we're following the current guidance.
And have you had any problems at all so far through the pandemic and also in this Omicron wave in terms of staff shortages?
Like most services, we've had some staff absences, but we've had very strict guidelines and guidance on station. COVID risk assessments have been completed and regularly reviewed. So we've actually been able to cut down on the number of infections in the workplace, and at no time has it affected our operational response.
And if you did have a couple of members of staff who did catch coronavirus, you were talking to me earlier and saying that you work in almost bubbles. What would that do to kind of the service and the operations that you undertake if a couple of people, say, got ill?
For us, we would follow the risk assessment that's on the station, so our staff maintain social distancing, hands, face and space. Obviously, there's times when we can't maintain that social distancing, so when we're in the crew cab here, but we'll make sure we wear masks. So if staff on duty do contract the virus, because we've maintained those control measures, the whole station doesn't need to isolate, just be those individuals.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time, Matt. Very reassuring that that was a negative COVID test. But this is going to be in place precautionary for the next 5 weeks. But it does come amid concern from the Trades Union Congress that this does not cover all eligible, all emergency service and critical workers that the government perhaps might have set out at the start of the pandemic. And again, it comes amid the government admitting that they were struggling to get COVID tests out via home delivery. I went on the website last night and they said there were no home delivery slots available for lateral flow tests. So I think it'll be a relief to people here in Bedfordshire, for example, that they are able to get access to regular COVID testing.
Thanks, Amelia. Appreciate that. We're going to take a break there with the time, 18 minutes past 7. We've got sports news next, of course, FA Cup weekend. One match to go tonight. Paul Coyte joins us to react to Arsenal's shock exit. What's next for Mikel Arteta? But first, the weather.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking cold to start in the east with rain and drizzle in the west. Let's take a look at the details. Well, it will be a grey and damp start to the week across southwest England with rain and drizzle, light winds and mild with a high of 12 Celsius.
A chilly morning in the southeast of England with patchy frost and mist. Once any mist clears, there'll be bright spells before cloud builds.
Across Wales, a cloudy and murky morning with widespread rain and drizzle. A milder start than yesterday with a high of 11 Celsius.
Here's the Midlands. Across the Midlands, a cloudy start in the far west with outbreaks of rain and drizzle. Further east, it will be a cooler morning with patchy frost and a high of 8 Celsius.
Okay, let's go to the northeast. A cold morning there with local frost, mist and hill fog. Once any mist clears, there'll be some bright spells for a time before cloud builds in from the west. A generally cloudy and damp start across southern Scotland, but a chance of the odd bright spell in the far east. Winds increasing through the morning, particularly along western coasts.
And here's Northern Ireland. A grey and cloudy morning, patchy rain and drizzle, though becoming more widespread through the day. A mild day with a high of 12 Celsius. It remains cloudy with rain and drizzle spreading eastwards throughout. Windy across the northwest with a risk of gales, and that's how it's shaping up for the rest of the day. Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News. Welcome back. It is 7:22. This is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel on GB News. We're live on your TV and on your radio.
Do you know how you know it's Eamon and Isabel?
How do I know?
Because on the screen now,
Helpfully.
I sit in the right place where it says Eamon, and then over there, Isabel.
Yeah.
In case anybody thought.
Because we were the other way around last week.
Yeah, and
and
they
we were
might have
getting
thought
lots
I
of
was Isabel.
Keyboard warriors complaining that we were sitting the wrong way round. Duly noted.
In the right
speaking
spot
of brows,
now. Paul
Speaking
Coit.
of brows.
Yeah. For this today. So where are we going to go? Jokovic first of all?
It made me feel a bit dizzy. You sitting this way. I'm not sure who to speak to or where to look. Honestly.
Well, look, if you're not sure where to turn, where should Djokovic turn? Because,
Very
of
good.
course, he's just won his court appeal, but we're hearing that ministers are reserving the right to ignore the courts and they could still chuck him out.
They can still chuck him out. So the immigration minister has the right now, although the decision's been made, to actually say, no, I'm going to overturn that. You still have to leave, which also goes with something else, which has been mentioned, that that means he wouldn't be able to return for another 3 years.
Right.
So there's that on top of that as well. I just wonder, I mean, this has obviously gone far beyond sport now, and then there's a little bit of jousting either side. Well, we want this and we want this. I just wonder how Djokovic feels about it, because, we kind of get the idea of the sort of character he is, but is he in the middle of this now just thinking, is this truly worth it? Is it truly worth what I'm going through?
He's a sportsman. He's world number one. It's another battle for him, isn't it?
You know what, Eamon? You've just you honestly just nail on the head, because I was talking to a journalist in Melbourne earlier today, and a sports journalist asked what was going on. And at the time, he's saying, the white van is outside. We believe he's inside. The whole of Australia is watching this, just wondering what's going to happen next, which twist and turn. But that's it. He's a sportsman. I mean, the difference is that they have that will to win. You speak to sportsmen that will beat their kids at table tennis no matter what, they have to win. So it's going to be another battle that he has to win. Yeah. I'm sure it'll continue as long as he does.
What we're seeing and have seen throughout the whole pandemic is the Australian government are not for turning when it comes to the restrictions around COVID. They've been so authoritarian. And I suspect this could go all the way for them. The knock-on, I suppose, will be whether or not here in the UK, will we welcome him with open arms in Wimbledon if we know that he's not vaccinated and all the rest of it? Will he be allowed to play? How will players like Andy Murray be feeling about it? It's going to, this story has yards and yards to go.
It's rules, isn't it? I mean, it's the rules that are being broken. He, as far as he's concerned, I think a lot of people, even in Australia, have my attitude to Djokovic is probably, maybe yours has, from when we were talking about him on Friday, thinking, he's coming, he thinks he can swan into Australia. But he has done what was asked of him. Now, whether he was negative, whether he was positive, and there's also the scenes of him doing different events over in Serbia at the time when he was supposed to have tested positive. I don't know, but he's done everything that was asked of him of the actual Australian Open. So then has come, and then he's obviously gone into this storm. So, I think just people are thinking, well, what do you want from him? He's actually done what was asked. So where do we go from here?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it?
Let's switch now. FA Cup weekend, a couple of big shocks involving Cambridge and Nottingham Forest, and nobody could say they weren't worth their wins.
Oh, yeah.
Mikel Arteta, the Arsenal manager, where does he go from here?
I think he carries on, has a quiet word with his players, trying to say that these games are important. I don't know about you, but I'm seeing this maybe more as the years go on. And firstly, I don't know whether it's the fact that players don't see the FA Cup as important, which I don't really buy. I think it's more of a case we're seeing a lot of players, a lot of teams that are going out against lesser sides and thinking, what, we'll walk this. It'll be fine.
Like Spurs yesterday?
Obviously, I tell you, though, if we could talk about the last 14 minutes of the game, it was absolutely magnificent. Maybe the first part was a bit wobbly. Yeah. But, it is that you can see the attitude of the players. And I think, that you can't take these games lightly. This is what the excitement... I don't want to say magic of the FA Cup.
Well, I do.
I do love it.
It is. I mean, you just saw there last night at Forest Ground absolutely what it meant to them. Absolutely brilliant. What it meant to Cambridge as well. What it meant to Newcastle.
Of course. And Chesterfield, although they got beat 5-1 by Chelsea when they scored, everybody went crazy. I mean, there's so many underdogs that could win. I mean, even Manchester United may beat Aston Villa tonight. You never know.
That is the only game left, isn't it? It's the only game left.
It's the only game left. That's tonight. Of course, the draws will be made.
Middlesbrough waits.
Middlesbrough waits. Yeah. So you're thinking of Wembley already.
Well, it's... but it is an interesting time, and maybe the rules go out the window, as you say, in terms of, what it means to certain players, and I mean, if you've grown up with the FA Cup or not. But I think no matter where you are in the world, you know what the FA Cup is.
I think so. I mean, it's another thing that people are saying. It's the most famous cup in the world, which it is. It's been going since the 1870s, and it's something that every team wants to win. And that's another thing that we mentioned the other day. Fans want to win trophies.
And Kidderminster Harriers, of course, after their win, they will face West Ham in the fourth round.
Great draw for them. It's a great draw for them. So they're the lowest ranked. There's always one that goes on and on and on. So Kidderminster Harriers, who knows?
Can I just ask you before you go about the Winter Olympics? Of course, they are coming very soon.
Yeah.
Greg Rutherford doing his little debut on the old bobsleigh. How's that gone?
Well, there's a lot of athletes that try this, that try thinking, well, once the career is over, is there something else we can do?
Yeah.
Sheer power, and it's running with the bobsleigh. They're the second fastest. Well, I say they're the second fastest, probably the second slowest, we could say.
Right.
17th. They're going in St Moritz, so there is a chance that he could qualify the Olympics. I think It's unlikely.
Really? Oh,
I think it's
shame.
unlikely. He's a lovely fella, and it'd
Did
be
he
great if
go
he
on
succeeds.
Strictly? Am I right in thinking?
He did.
He's literally
Is there Olympics
trying
right
it
now?
all.
Winter Olympics? I'm not
Well,
really-
just that he's gone on from the Olympics in 2012 to Strictly, he's trying his hand at dancing, and now he's having a go at the bobsleigh.
Won MasterChef as well.
Oh, and he won MasterChef.
He won MasterChef.
He's a busy chap,
He's
hasn't
just
he?
looking for the new thing.
He's looking
so
for the
maybe
new
bobsleigh
thing.
is it.
Oh, what's
if
that
it
film?
isn't-
Cool Runnings.
Yeah, yeah.
It's got elements of that in it.
It has,
hasn't
of course it has, yeah, bobsleigh. Yeah, we wish him well, because
Yeah.
he's a really nice fella, and it's athletes, it seems to be sprinters, because that's that sheer power that gets that thing, but obviously it depends on the bob.
The bob.
How fast the bob?
Paul, it's not over yet with this Djokovic situation.
Yeah.
Hang around this morning. We may see you again to give us an update on what's going on. Cheers, mate. Thanks very much indeed. We're in Monmouth in Wales. Welsh Reporter is out there on your doorstep. Find out what you think about the biggest stories. So we'll be knocking your doors and finding out your views here on GB News. Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News. Welcome back. The time is 7:31. Thanks for staying tuned on Breakfast on GB News. We're live on your TV and radio this morning. Let's bring you right up to date with the news that matters this morning. Novak Djokovic has won his appeal against deportation from Australia. The court ruled the tennis star should be released after the judge found unreasonableness in how the border officials made his decision. But the immigration minister has now reserved the right to exercise personal power to expel the star. 19 people, including 9 children, have been killed in an apartment fire in New York City. 200 firefighters responded to the blaze in the 19-story building, which was started by a malfunctioning electric heater. Kazakhstan's security forces have detained nearly 8,000 people after unrest in the country last week. Local government buildings were also briefly captured or torched in several major cities as the initially peaceful protests against fuel price hikes turned violent. The Home Secretary is set to introduce Martin's Law, requiring large public venues to make security preparations to deal with terror attacks. It follows the 2017 Manchester Arena bombing, in which 22 innocent people, including 29-year-old Martin Hett, were killed. Priti Patel says tougher measures are needed to protect the public from harm. Michaela Ye Rodriguez has made Golden Globes history, becoming the first transgender star to win the Best Television Actress award. for her role in Pose. There were no guests at this year's ceremony after heavy criticism of the organising body for a lack of diversity. Dark Western, Power of the Dog and HBO's Succession were the big winners, picking up 3 awards each. The actor and comedian Bob Saget has been found dead in his Florida hotel room. The 65-year-old was known for his role as the jovial dad in the TV sitcom Full House in the 80s and 90s. Detectives say they've found no signs of foul play or drug use, and the cause of his death is currently unclear.
We're just going to go back to one of the stories Isabel was referring to there. We're doing the front pages, yes. I'll get used to this format. This is very long without doing the newspapers. Let's just go to the newspapers. We go here to review the morning newspapers. We've got Joe Phillips here. Joe is a former spin doctor, and we've got Andre Walker, who is a political commentator. And I just want to get into these things because we've talked enough, and we saw there, Andre, in Isabel's news rundown there, what is termed as Martin's Law. Now, explain to people, if and when this comes into effect, what it will mean or why it's there.
Well, I have to say, I don't like the way that they constantly name these laws after people because it gets very confusing. Yeah. But Martin Hett was a young man who died at the Ariana Grande concert in 2017 that was blown up. There was huge criticism of the arena simply because the security there was seen to be very, very poor. Now, I don't know how well you know Manchester. I think you do know it, but it's...
Very well.
Very well. It's above Manchester Victoria train station, so you would have thought at a time of heightened terrorist concern, at something that was a major concert in a national train station, there would have been a level of security that there just wasn't. And now Priti Patel is saying that it's about time that we actually required venues, just in the same way.
Not only Manchester, but everywhere. And what would determine whether that venue should have security?
Yeah, well, the thing is, there's always going to be levels of inspection on various things. They're going to have their hot dogs inspected by the local council. So presumably what will happen is the police will come in and make a security assessment of the place. Yeah. And if you fail to comply with that, but I have to say, you know, the level of training, the level of knowledge that was displayed at the Ariana Grande concert by security, who, by the way, you know, are probably very nice people, but just didn't have the level of knowledge. That's the issue that's come up here.
Yeah, OK. Joe, we'll go to COVID. This is in the Express. This is page 2 of the Express. Living with COVID by March.
Yeah, so we're expecting the Prime Minister to announce by March, so within the next few weeks, that actually we're not going to carry on at the level we are, the huge vaccinations and the massive testing. I think there's a general feeling, probably cautiously and probably wise to be cautious still at the moment, that Omicron has not turned out to be as severely debilitating as Delta was. And so we need to now get back to some sort of normality, which means that businesses can carry on without this stop-start. Schools can carry on. The National Health Service can get back to doing other things apart from dealing with COVID. So this is about how we go back to some sort of normal.
Yeah, but then we're out of the cold and flu season anyway, aren't we?
Yes, we are, and we're moving into the better weather. But, you know, there's a bigger issue here, Eamon, because it's actually using what we now know, that, you know, ventilation is really, really important to good health. Good health preventative measures will help people fight whether it's the next variation of COVID or whether it's another illness that comes around the corner. And we need to think a little bit more about how we manage things, whether it's working from home, more flexible working, how we make offices safer for people, how we make public transport safer, whether or not we keep mask wearing. There's a lot of stuff to discuss because many people will still be...
I presume this is music to your ears.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that the whole thing has been handled in a way that perhaps we wouldn't handle it if we had our experience again. But I think when the public inquiry comes about, we'll be able to look at all that. But I do have to say, I think when we look at the damage to the economy, we're now talking about the coronavirus having cost us more than the defeat of Nazi Germany. And we're talking about potentially paying off for the next 150 years. That is the public sector debt. I think we have to say to ourselves that we have to do things better in future. and simply saying to people, don't go to work, self-isolate forever, I think has just been hugely, hugely damaging. And I have to say, you know, I've got relatives who are teenagers. You know, you lock up a 14-year-old or you put them, you ground them for a weekend, they go absolutely crazy. We've locked them up for 2 years. No wonder there's an explosion in mental health problems.
You know, Joe, I often think, what does this sound like to someone who has lost a relative?
Well, absolutely, yeah. And I think, you know, now, from the relative safety, I mean, it's a bit like being on a boat, isn't it? Going through a terrible squall, and then you come into calmer waters and you think, oh, that wasn't so bad. Actually, we have to remember how we were, all of us, absolutely petrified when it first came through. It happened so quickly. You know, there were calls on the government to act more quickly, and arguably they should have done. And as Andre says, that may come out in the public inquiry. We were ill prepared. And again, in a way, it goes back to what we were talking about the Manchester Arena. So much of this is about preparation for the worst case scenario. We all hope it's not going to happen, but we hadn't got a plan. There had been practices several years ago that were not put into place by government. So now we need to use, in order to pay homage, if you like, to the people who did lose their lives, many of them unnecessarily, we need to be prepared so it doesn't happen again.
May I just use this platform to talk about the issue that was personal to me, about visiting dying relatives in hospital. You know, we've got to be better on that biosecurity side. The number of people who ended up seeing their relatives sitting for weeks and in some cases months on their own on the deathbeds, I think was absolutely horrendous. In my case, by the time my mother's sisters were able to see her, she actually had lost the ability to speak anyway, and it was far too late, and that's extremely distressing.
Yeah. And also, I think funerals, limiting the number of funerals, for goodness sake.
Yes.
You know, I think that's ridiculous. Article 16, European Union hitting back over a threat from Liz Truss. What's this all about?
Well, I'm nervous about talking to somebody from Northern Ireland about Article 16, because presumably you are the greatest experts in this room on it. But it is a major, major problem. The Northern Ireland exports, 16% of its exports to the Republic, 35%.
Northern Ireland can do very well out of all of this. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, look, I think if the concern is, of course, that Northern Ireland is going to be a backdoor into the internal market. But I have to say, from my own point of view, when you are talking about stuff that's just for sale in supermarkets in Belfast, the fact that you're making it extremely difficult to export from GB, I think, is a real problem. And, of course, it's something like in Ballymena. So I'm going to try and use some Northern Irish knowledge here. I think something like
I'm going to whistle.
a third of the pork consumed in the United Kingdom comes from Ballymena. Yeah. And so there needs to be an ability for foodstuffs to be able to cross the Irish Sea.
A lot of politics being played, of course, you know, because it makes Southern Ireland a bigger market for Northern Ireland, which will suit a lot of people.
It's not like people from Northern Ireland have not played politics before, though.
Indeed.
Should we move on to something else?
Right, OK. I love that. Joe doesn't want to talk to Eamon about Northern Ireland.
No, but you've done it so well, both of you. What could I possibly add?
Thousands back a bus driver after he was dismissed for being too short. Tell us the story.
So this is Tracy Scholes. She's 57. She's been one of Greater Manchester's bus drivers. She was one of the company's first female bus drivers. 34 years she's been working there. She's only 5 foot, and I know how she feels.
Someone's only just noticed this.
No, they've changed the buses. And they've put new wing mirrors on, and now she can't see.
Would a cushion not be an answer?
Well, I don't know. I presume they've investigated all these things. I mean, you know, it's one of those stories that, you know, obviously it's a terrible thing for her. Yeah. She's going to lose her job, probably lose her pension. You know, she's got kids and things like that. She said she had a miserable Christmas. Her union has supported her. The bus company Go North West say that she's a valued member of the team. They always say that, don't they? And they'd made numerous proposals to accommodate her, but the suggestions that they'd offered didn't offer the same amount of money and the same amount of hours. So it is a sort of thing about, and speaking as a short person, you know, you do sometimes think, life is not very geared to people who are quite short. And you would have thought, wouldn't you, that there was some mechanism within a bus.
I would have thought so.
That you could adjust the wing mirrors or something like that. But,
but you see people...
If she was disabled, they would be able to do that.
I was about to say exactly that. You see all these vehicles that have been altered for people who've lost limbs and all sorts. Exactly. I mean, I'd have thought... Yeah. I mean, surely, you can put your kid in a booster seat.
Who is the bus company?
Go North West.
They're what?
go northwest.
Go northwest, do the right thing.
Yeah.
Do the right thing. I mean, that's a ridiculous story, and they should be able to...
And she's been there for such a long time, you know, 34 years.
Yeah, yeah. We're expecting a statement from Michael Gove around 9 o'clock this morning as to putting pressure on developers and saying they've got to pick up the tab for unsafe cladding.
Well, I have to say I've got mixed emotions because you look in these local authorities to all of these fire inspectors. These people all signed off the cladding as being absolutely tickety-boo. The fire inspectors at Kensington and Chelsea Council said that that all of their tower blocks were safe, and of course we discovered, much to our horror, that they weren't. I just think that there has been a failure on the part of government here. That's why I'm going to say I've got some sympathy with a developer that was told by the government that the cladding was safe and is now being sent a bill.
So I thought they've retrospectively looked at everything and they thought, oh, you put the wrong stuff in
yes,
here.
Exactly. That's what I thought. That the stuff that they said they were going to use,
they didn't.
Wasn't what they did actually use.
The problem is with all of it, there's a debate in terms of what the requirements were at the time, and it appears to be unclear. Look, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's something the government needs to step in and assist with. But at the same time, the most important thing of them all is these people who've now got worthless properties who bought them in good faith. And so, frankly, between the government and the developers, somebody needs to sort this out.
I mean, this is so ridiculous, so awful, so cruel. And you look at where money has been spent, and indeed you look at the foreign aid budget, and if this happened in some other country, they'd be stepping in to make all of this right. The right thing, I always believe in do the right thing. The right thing here is to do right by the tenants or the people who have bought these flats or apartments as well. Whoever's faulted it, and if the government has to stand in and pay the bill, then that is the right thing to do.
But we did it before, didn't we? When we underwrite to buy, we sold off properties that in tower blocks that we knew the tower block wasn't going to last 25 years, and so people are ending up left holding the baby. I mean, I think it's incredibly difficult, and particularly a lot of these places are in city centres where people really struggle to pay mortgages, and so when you turn to somebody, there'll be people watching this show who, if they were asked for £20,000, would probably have it. But if you're struggling as a young person buying your first home, there's not a prayer.
But it's life-changing.
Yeah, it's awful. And it's been hanging over their heads for years and years and years.
And
so
of course,
people who want to move for, jobs or family reasons can't.
And I have to say...
But there's no point in saying, oh, we're going to ask the developers to do it voluntarily.
Sure.
You know, you either make it a law or the government pays for it. But you can't ask them to... Because that point that you made, Andre, about it being unclear whether what the rules are... Too often, it's what can we get away with?
And the point I'd make about that, of course, is when the building's been finished and the building inspector has signed it off, one would expect, as the developer, for them not to come back 3 years, 4 years, 5 years later and say, you know how we signed off that building? We shouldn't have signed it off because it was wrongly done. I mean, and presumably with a lot of these developers, they will have moved on.
Well,
but I have to say, if you're one of these people, I drive back and go past Grenfell Tower, and the place is absolutely... I can understand why they've put the hoarding over it, because you would be terrified if you were in a position now where you had a building clad in anything like that.
Awful.
Yeah,
it's
but
dreadful.
I suppose they're telling the developers at 9 o'clock, this is voluntary, but if you don't do it, it will be.
Yeah, but how long is that going to take? That's not going to help people who've been waiting for years and years trying to sell houses.
Guys, we'll have you back again after 8:30. Andre Walker, Joe Phillips, thank you both very much indeed for the moment. Tributes are pouring in for Labour MP and Shadow Minister Jack Dromey, who passed away in his Birmingham constituency on Friday. Joining us now from outside his Erdington office is our West Midlands reporter, Balvinder Sidhu. Balvinder, over to you. How have people reacted to the news? I mean, anybody who's met Jack Dromey have nothing but good things to say about him.
Absolutely. I'm outside his advice surgery in Erdington in Birmingham, where a number of flowers have been left in tribute for the MP who's been serving this constituency since 2010. And I just bumped into a business owner who's on his way to work, and he said he was a great man. He said he spoke to everybody in the same manner, regardless of who they were, whether they were the CEO of a big company or a cleaner. He said he himself helped him campaign during his last election. Now, we do know that on Friday morning he passed away, and just 24 hours earlier he was speaking in the House of Commons on behalf of Afghan refugees. We understand that he died of natural causes at his home in Birmingham here. he is, going to be deeply missed, not just by the community here, but nationally. People from across all parties have been paying tribute to him. Former Prime Minister Gordon Brown described him as a great humanitarian. He was also, one of the greatest trade unionists of his time. He was the Deputy General Secretary of the Transport General Workers Union, which is now known as Unite. Sir Keir Starmer also said that he was someone who deeply cared about his constituents. He leaves behind his wife of 40 years, Harriet Harman, and 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. And it was his son who left a lovely tribute to him on Twitter on Friday. And of course, people here, MPs here, Jess Phillips, Preet Kaur Gill, nearby Conservative MP Andrew Mitchell, who represents Sutton Coldfield, have all said, similar things like Birmingham will not be the same without Jack Dromey. A local special school said he gave a voice to the voiceless. He represented those children with special needs. This country and, this region has lost a much-loved and highly regarded MP.
Vinder, yeah, as a lot of people have been saying to me, he was one of the good guys. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for the update there.
Yeah,
and you've got to feel so sorry for Harriet Harman as well, his wife, who has just announced she was going to retire at the next election. And just very, very sad. I had the pleasure of interviewing him a number of times, and a nice man.
Yeah,
nice man.
and they were such an interesting couple, weren't they? He was from a totally different background from her, but they just worked so well together. And all reports that I've been reading in a lot of the obituaries over the weekend is that he treated her very much like he treasured her, quite rightly. But for 4 decades, they were very happily married. Very sad story, that. Look, we're on your doorstep next. We're in Wales this morning. Lily Hewitson is in Monmouth for us, getting reaction to the issues of the day. Lily, what are you hearing?
Yes, good morning, Eamon and Isabel. I'm in Monmouth for you this morning. It's a beautiful market town just 2 miles from the border in between England and Wales. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is that border and how there's different rules here and different rules in England and how confusing that can be for business people, particularly here in Monmouth. Now, I'm going to be speaking to a lady called Nicola. As you can see, this is her shop. There's lots of bee products, lots of honey, lots of bee-themed things. So it might give us a little bit of an indication about what we're going to be chatting to her about next. So let's hope that she is in the shop. There she is. Oh, nice and bright and early for us this morning. Hiya, Nicola. How are you doing?
Fine, thank
you. Good. Thank you so much for allowing us onto your doorstep this morning, so bright and early. So firstly, we've had a walk outside, lots and lots of bee products. Can you tell us a little bit more about Bees for Development?
Yes, we're a charity working with beekeepers in the poorest countries around the world. So we have this shop here. Our offices are behind, but the shop helps us to raise revenue for our work with beekeepers in the poorest countries, because beekeeping's a fantastic way for people to make a rural livelihood, and especially now in these COVID times, many people have lost employment in towns in Africa, so they can go back to their rural roots and do beekeeping.
So something we were having a chat about just as we came to the shop this morning was this international aid, which you've particularly had trouble with the charity, haven't you, over the last couple of months? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, last year the UK government radically cut its aid budget, and we were receiving UK DFID funds for our work in Ethiopia, and that funding has all been cut. So very tough for us, and we have to work even harder to raise funds in the UK. But of course that's difficult too, because we had to cancel many of our fundraising events last summer, but we're hoping we can go ahead better this year.
I'm sure. I'm really hopeful for you on that one. So something, you must be really important to the town here in Monmouth, because I was having a read up and chatting to a couple of people when I was here last week about how this is the first bee town of the UK, which is something I've never heard of before. So what exactly is a bee town?
Welcome to Monmouth Bee Town. There's lots of bee things going on here, wonderful things actually. The County Council and the Town Council are really good. They've been reducing their mowing of verges and reducing trimming of hedgerows and all these things. They have a pollinator policy to support pollinating insects. If you walk down the main street, there's lots of planters with beautiful bee plants in. And then in the summer, we have Monmouth Bee Festival and bee walks, bee talks, all sorts of bee things. So it's all going on here in Monmouth.
Sounds good fun. So What has it been like running a shop which is just on the border? As I was saying, just outside now, Monmouth is 2 miles from England, so literally down the road. You've got a completely different set of COVID restrictions there than we have here in Wales. What's it been like running the shop over the last, 2 years or so, when you've got people, in and out who are actually used to perhaps different restrictions than you've been living with whilst living here?
Yes, that's right, especially last Christmas. Usually Christmas week is the best week for our shop, and last year we had to shut in the week before Christmas, so we missed a whole week of Christmas trading, but the shops across the border were open, and of course it's very close. Our bees fly across the border every day, and yes, that was tough for us, and we still have a policy of maximum of 4 people in the shop at any time, and it's kind of sad when people come in and then there's more than 4 and you have to ask them to go out and it's cold to wait in the street, so of course we lose custom.
And what have the customers been like? Have they been quite amenable and said, OK, yes, we'll head outside, we will wear a mask, only 4 of us will come in? Have they been quite happy to do that?
99%, yes, absolutely fine. But people don't like waiting out in cold weather, so I think they tend to drift away if we haven't got room for them. That's the only thing.
And you will have been across the different restrictions, of course, in England and in Wales. You will have known what Boris Johnson's been up to and what Mark Drakeford's been up to as well. Who do you think has done the better job over the last 2 years? I know you don't really want to tell me, but I would love to know.
I think Mark Drakeford has done a very thoughtful job, actually. You can detect that they're really trying to do the best for people in Wales, so quite happy with what's happened here.
Lovely stuff. Well, thank you so much for having us on your doorstep this morning, Nicola. Do stay tuned with us here in Monmouth this morning. Next, we're going to be talking hospitality, and I'm heading to one of the oldest working cinemas here in Wales to talk about what it's been like running the business so close to the border over the last 2 years.
Oh, I like that. I have an interest in old cinemas and the Art Deco and all that. But it was interesting, Lily, to see how Nicola, her face just lit up whenever you talked about bumblebees. Just came alive.
Yeah,
Thank
of course.
you.
It was lovely. She had a little bumblebee pin on too.
I know.
Yes,
she thinks Monmouth is the bee's knees. You have to tell her to beehive. All right, I'm going to stop now.
That's good.
No more bee jokes from me. Look, lots more coming your way here on Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel. We're getting reaction, of course, to the news from Australia this morning. Djokovic has won his appeal. He will be able to stay in Australia. At the moment, it looks as though that's the case, although we are hearing that ministers in the government have reserved the right to overturn the court case. So it sounds like that row's not going anywhere.
Never mind that. Avocados and bananas we were talking about earlier on here as a picture. We got this picture from Andre here. No, have we got that?
We will in a second, sure.
It's quite easy to see because it's a big bit of toast with 2 big bananas on it. He's saying, so he's enjoying that right now this morning. But he sent the picture and I see it here. We don't see it anywhere else.
Yeah, look, we were talking about that. We were talking about all the issues that matter. Bananas, avocados, Djokovic. We'll also be reflecting on the Queen's Platinum Jubilee this year. And did you see those pictures of Kate over the weekend?
Kate Middleton, yes. Let's have a look at those. What did you think of those? I thought very Victoriana. Have we not got those either? We've got those. Let's have a look at those. Just flick through them because we get to the ones that I think are...
I don't think it looks like her, Eamon.
Yes, but it looks very well. Now, the first one you see here on the left of your screen, I think that could have been taken in 1880
So to those who are
something.
listening on the radio, it's the one that looks kind of like a debutante photograph
You'll
from
know
sort
it.
of,
Yeah.
Princess Margaret. Look, we have to leave it there. It's time to take a break. As we've been saying, loads more coming your way at 8 o'clock. We'll see you in a moment.
I'm
First
having
of all,
some banana and toast. during this
Sounds yum. See you in a mo. Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking cold to start in the east with rain and drizzle in the west. Let's take a look at the details. Well, it will be a grey and damp start to the week across southwest England with rain and drizzle, light winds and mild with a high of 12 Celsius.
A chilly morning in the southeast of England with patchy frost and mist. Once any mist clears, there'll be bright spells before cloud builds.
Across Wales, a cloudy and murky morning with widespread rain and drizzle. A milder start than yesterday with a high of 11 Celsius.
Here's the Midlands. Across the Midlands, a cloudy start in the far west with outbreaks of rain and drizzle. Further east, it will be a cooler morning with patchy frost and a high of 8 Celsius.
Okay, let's go to the northeast. A cold morning there with local frost, mist and hill fog. Once any mist clears, there'll be some bright spells for a time before cloud builds in from the west. A generally cloudy and damp start across southern Scotland, but a chance of the odd bright spell in the far east. Winds increasing through the morning, particularly along western coasts.
And here's Northern Ireland. A grey and cloudy morning, patchy rain and drizzle, though becoming more widespread through the day. A mild day with a high of 12 Celsius. It remains cloudy with rain and drizzle spreading eastwards throughout. Windy across the northwest with a risk of gales. And that's how it's shaping up for the rest of the day. Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock on radio and television on this Monday, January the 10th. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamon and Isabel.
Yes, we're on your TV and on your radio. Don't forget, as you leave the house, you can find us on DAB+. Coming up this morning.
As you may have heard, Novak Djokovic has won an appeal against a decision to refuse him a visa in the Federal Circuit Court of Australia ahead of the Australian Open. More on that in just a moment.
Should anti-vaxxers be allowed near schools? Well, a school administrator will share his thoughts in a moment.
The cost of living. As the cost squeeze deepens, we're going to be speaking to a mother of two about why she dreads the postman, because he just brings bills.
OK, we start with the breaking story this hour. And Djokovic has won an appeal against a decision to refuse him a visa in the Federal Circuit Court of Australia ahead of the Australian Open. We can bring in Paul Coyte to analyse all of this. This is a really interesting developing story throughout the course of the morning.
Yeah.
We got the indications quite early on that the judge was supportive of him when he was saying during the hearing, what more could this man have done to present his case to immigration officers? But we've subsequently heard after this verdict that it could still be overthrown.
It could still be overthrown. It's state against country, against Djokovic. It's honestly, nobody would have expected it to go this way, and I'm sure Novak Djokovic didn't either. Whether he was expected, that he was very tight-lipped about whether he was going to make it over to Australia for months beforehand. Then, due to the exemption, now the exemption is the fact that he said that he tested positive, which is one of the exemptions, which means you don't have to be vaccinated to actually go into Australia. So he'd also not admitted to the fact that he hadn't been vaccinated, or whether he hasn't. I know I'm in a web of it already. But in the interview that he'd given to Border Police, and they said, now questioning regarding your vaccination, are you vaccinated? And then he did answer, I am not vaccinated.
Right,
although,
so we have it in black and white now
we
that
do.
he's admitted he's not vaccinated.
Although it's pretty obvious that he wasn't, because then if he had been, we wouldn't be going all through
this is a big political, big social issue, but where will it leave him in terms of tennis fans and looking ahead to other tournaments? I mean, if he does play in the Australian Open, will he have support behind him, or is it as divisive as it is in real life for everyone
I think it's actually changing as the days go on. I think when he first flew over, and I think a lot of people in Australia, because these are obviously going to be the fans that are going to see him play, were saying, you know, he shouldn't be here. Look at what people have been through in this country, that he can waltz in, etc., etc. Now it seems that the mistake is not with Novak Djokovic. He's done everything that he was expected to and has abided by those rules. And now the law has come in and said, well, you shouldn't be here. So he has a lot of sympathy. I mean, the Serbian fans that are outside the court today, that proves that. But what, you know, the acid test, we will see if he plays, what the reaction is going to be, because he is loved in Australia because he's so many times champion there. It's going to be so interesting to see whether he does get booed and what the reaction is going to be. But I think public perception is changing slightly towards him now than they were before. Do you not?
You know, a lot of people describing him as no-vax Djokovic. Of
course.
They see him as being sort of getting preferential treatment, that he thinks he's above the rules. I think that perhaps he will always be linked to this story in a way that the Federers and the Nadals have always been so popular. I think that, you know, those anti-vaxxers will obviously wed themselves to him. But I think for Australians, as you say, been through so much and suffered at the hands of these really authoritarian rules, will feel a little bit annoyed, I would imagine.
I agree. I think the fact that he's been locked away in this hotel has probably changed perception as well. It's not the fact that he's got a free ride, that he's walked in. If he'd gone into some luxury mansion and stayed there and played tennis in the background, and then he just maybe just turns up and plays. But it hasn't been as easy as maybe people would have expected. I mean, I still think it's such a tricky thing to call, because the thing's changing from one side to the other.
Yeah.
I kind of imagine now that he probably will play, which I wouldn't have thought was going to happen a couple of days ago.
Advantage Djokovic, but he hasn't won the match.
It's a tiebreaker. Let's put it out. It's a tiebreaker.
I like it.
It's a political football, or in this case, tennis ball, isn't it, as well? Headlines on this Monday morning. This is what you're waking up to. 19 people, including 9 children, have been killed in an apartment fire in New York City. 200 firefighters responded to the blaze. It was a 19-storey building, and it was started by what the fire service is saying, a malfunctioning electric heater. The city's mayor, Eric Adams, called it one of the worst fires witnessed during modern times.
Rishi Sunak has backed calls to cut the COVID isolation period to 5 days. The Chancellor's among a number of cabinet ministers putting growing pressure on the PM to reduce the requirement from 7. He reportedly believes that it could help reduce staffing shortages caused by the Omicron variant.
Pregnant women are being urged to get their COVID-19 vaccinations as soon as they can to protect their babies. Nearly all pregnant women admitted to hospital with COVID symptoms between May and October last year were unvaccinated. The government says vaccines are safe for pregnant women and have no impact on fertility.
Buckingham Palace has unveiled the lineup of celebrations to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Street parties, a concert featuring some of the world's biggest stars, we don't know who yet, and a chance to see the Queen's homes up close are all included. It will, of course, be marking her 70 years on the throne, with a 4-day UK bank holiday weekend from the 2nd to the 5th of June.
Anti-vaccine groups have been targeting schools across the country in protest over vaccines for children. It's been proposed that exclusion zones should be introduced in order to keep them away. But is this right? Here's Giles Bell. He's a philosophy of religion teacher and a senior admissions tutor at Shrewsbury School. He joins us now. Giles, is keeping anti-vax parents away from schools like this helpful or harmful to the children?
Well, it's a good question. Good morning. But I think I work in a secondary school, And I would have thought that in a secondary school, the pupils and the teachers are able to discuss these sort of things in class, and a good science department and a good headmaster or headmistress will be discussing these things with their children. And I would have thought it's not really a huge issue. If it was a primary school, then I think smaller children might find this sort of thing unsettling on their way into school. It also, let's face it, it has to depend on the style of protest. So, I mean, if there's a couple of people just sort of politely saying, I'm choosing not to take the vaccine, and here's why, that's one thing. But if there's a sort of howling mob outside the gates yelling abuse at the children as they go in, I think that's a different thing.
Giles, how's it working inside the gates? I mean, from a classroom point of view, on this programme last week, we were talking about how prohibitive and restrictive it would be, but we're not there. We're not there in your position, witnessing and seeing how you teach and how they respond.
Well, I still think that, people who choose not to take the vaccine are still in a minority, and that is reflected in our school community as well. So there will be one or two people whose families have chosen not to take the vaccine. There's some healthy debates going on around the school, and may I say, not just in the philosophy department, but probably in any lesson, because these topics will come up in any lesson. But I think that, and in a funny way, sometimes it's important to respect the minority position. So it's important that actually a child who's not been vaccinated because their parents don't want them to be, or they choose not to for their own beliefs, you have to make sure that child is given the respect for their position. And so I think, but I think that in general, I think it's always important to have a healthy debate about these sort of issues.
No one's denying a healthy debate is always welcome, certainly in schools. But according to a survey by the Association of School and College Leaders, 4 out of 5 schools say they've been targeted by anti-vaxxers. They report that many staff and leaders say they're intimidated. And you say that, you don't have a problem with them in secondary schools, perhaps. But, children as young as 11 coming into secondary school for the first time after being in the nurturing environment of a primary school would rightly find that quite intimidating, wouldn't they?
Yeah, as I said before, I mean, it depends, where. I can't speak for other schools around the country, and I suspect that maybe in some of the more populous areas of the country, maybe the protesters are a little bit more threatening. I don't know. In rather nice Shrewsbury, I haven't seen any of that kind of activity. But I think that, as I say, I think that actually an 11-year-old going into a secondary school, that's in a sense big school. I think they need to start to discuss these sort of things, and I don't, as I say, I don't see it as threatening.
But if adults are saying they're threatened, adults are reporting that they've been threatened by it. So I would be surprised if an 11-year-old wasn't. That's my question.
I'm guessing then, if the protest is threatening in the sense that there are people shouting abuse at teachers as they walk through the school gates, then that raises the level of the protest, doesn't it? And I think at that point you can start to say, well, hang on, and maybe phone people and say, well, actually, let's clear these people out, because I think there's no reason why a teacher should be abused on their way to work in the way that anyone else should be.
Giles, got to cut across you there and say goodbye to you. Really appreciate your insight there and taking the time talking to us. That's Giles Bell. He's a senior admissions tutor at Shrewsbury School. He's a philosophy of religion teacher as well there. Now, I want to introduce you to a very sad story, this, and I think this is a woman worth listening to. Her name is Rachel O'Brien. Let's see Rachel there. Because last year, a leading think tank predicted that this year, Rachel, would be the year of the squeeze. And my goodness me, have you felt it? And I want to talk to you. Tell us about yourself. You're a mum, and tell us what you do and tell us about your family.
Well, at the moment, I stay at home with the children. And yeah, it's the year of the squeeze. And I just want to say, I think this is wider than just my story. I think that there are so many people that are feeling it just as much as I am. my family are.
I mean, you're so right, and you know, Rachel, this will touch a nerve with so many people. That's why we're so keen to talk to you. And I saw your story in the Sun newspaper, and one of the things that jumped out at me, and again, a lot of people will relate to this, is you fear the postman. Tell people why you fear post coming through your door.
It's just because every time something comes, you know it's going to be another bill, and it's another bill that you think, am I going to be able to pay it? Which one should I pay this month? If I pay it, are we going to have enough to live off of? Am I going to have enough to put nappies on my children? Am I going to have enough to buy them breakfast? Am I going to have enough to, you know, just to live? And that's the thing. I don't describe it as the cost of living anymore. In my head, it's the cost of existence, because, you know, for families like us that are sort of, you know, already sort of so stretched, with everything doubling and nothing going up in line with it, it's not living. You don't live anymore. You exist. You try to exist, and it's, you know, people really need at the top to sort of come down to our level and say, you know, I saw the Prime Minister talking about everybody should go to Peppa Pig World, and I mean, half the time I can't even afford to go over the shop to get the things I need. So, you know, the people at the top really do need to come down to the level of the real people of the United Kingdom and just sort things out, really.
Yeah, and look, Rachel, that's why it's so important to have people like you on programmes like this telling us your story, because people will be listening to this and watching this. I can hear the emotion in your voice. It's hard to hear you talking about it. And, you know, for people at home who are wondering, you know, a bit of your background, you know, you and your husband have been doing the best you can for your kids. Your husband unfortunately got furloughed during the start of the pandemic. And since then, what's his situation? And, you know, you talk about the decisions it's made difficult for you, things like being able to put a nappy on your child. It's been worse than that. You questioned with your husband whether or not you should even tell your children about Father Christmas because you didn't feel that you were able to give them presents at Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, luckily enough, I've got absolutely amazing family around, so we did tell them about Father Christmas. However, there was a discussion as to whether, you know, do we tell them this year? Is it going to make a huge difference? And it was so hard because you think, you know, it's so magical. It's such a magical time of year, and it's all about presents and not presents, yes. But, you know, tell that to a 2-year-old that, you know, doesn't understand that yet. But, you know, my husband, yeah, he got furloughed and then he lost his job. Luckily, he, you know, found a job pretty quickly. But again, it's a minimum wage, 0-hour contract. And he's just constantly at work, and even then it's just not enough. I was in the care sector before I had my children. If I was to go to the care sector again now, I would have to work upwards of 70 hours a week just to be in a position.
See, Rachel, this is what makes it real to people, because there's so many people we hear about this, the working poor. And people say, well, how could this be? How could this be? And you're explaining to us how it can be. And I can tell it obviously has hit your self-esteem as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course it does. Because it's, I wouldn't say, I don't know, I'm not embarrassed about it anymore. I'm just so you get so used to being in this position. But I mean, you know, when people say to you, oh, do you want to come and do this today with the kids? And you have to make excuses. Oh, one of them's got a bit of a cold, can't come today. And the reality is you're just thinking, I don't think I can afford to get them a portion of chips today. So it's going to have to be a no. But it's just, you get so sick of hearing people saying, oh, well, you know, if you work hard, then that will make you make it. And no, because actually, when I was working in care, I was working hard. I worked hard. All the people that are, you know, looking after our elderly and our sick, they're working hard, but they're still just existing. So,
yeah,
you know,
Rachel,
where does it end?
If we were to have a government minister on here now, they would be talking to us about universal credit. They will be talking to us about support networks. They would be talking to us about food banks that are there for you. They would be saying They're doing their bit. They're levelling up the country. They're there for you. Do you feel anybody is there for you, or who is there for you?
Well, that's just it. I mean, I went to our local council, for instance, to ask with assistance with housing, because that is the biggest cost for us is our private rent. I mean, there's no cap on a private rent. You know, our rent, for instance, is nearly £300 more expensive than a house down the road that is council property. Why are the government not saying, well, hold on a minute, but you can't be charging that amount of money for a property that we're only charging that much for down the road? Because it's extortion. It's absolute extortion, and it is literally killing the mainline workers of the country. We're just not surviving. We're not surviving, and it will get worse. It will get worse because nobody is helping. Nobody is helping.
Rachel, I mean, as you say, you sound helpless. You feel like no one's listening. You say you're existing, not living. You feel like, I mean, are you sleeping at night? Are you, no. Struggling? No.
No, you don't sleep. You don't sleep. And if you do sleep, you wake up and it's boom, back to reality. There we are. You don't forget about it. You never, ever forget. It's just, and this is just to say, I know I stay at home with my 2 children at the moment. They're only 2 and 1. This is people that go to full-time work as well, full-time work as a couple or as a single parent or whatnot. This is everybody that is stuck on a minimum wage, 0-hour contract. It's everybody.
And doing work that the country relies on, as you say there. Have you ever had to choose between eating and heating, for instance?
Yes, absolutely. Do you turn the heating on? Not sure. You sat there and you're thinking, oh, let's put the kids' dressing gowns on. Let's put a blanket over them as well. And I mean, my eldest is 2. And she said, I'm freezing, Mummy. And you say, why?
You say you're just at home looking after the kids. That is a job. That is a very hard job, 2 children under 2. Any mum or dad will tell you that. And, the cost of childcare, the alternative of you going back to work, presumably, is just not affordable.
Crippling. Absolutely crippling. And I've got to say, because as you say, if a minister was on here, he'd be saying, oh, well, the universal credit is there to help. They pay, I think it's 85% of the childcare costs if you're going back to full-time work. However, that's great, but for one, you have to pay up front the cost a month in advance. So you've got to find, up to £1,000. I mean, I have 2 children, so that would be over £1,000 I'd have to find up front, which I don't have. I struggle to find £5 some weeks. I'm not going to find 1,000. And then on top of that, that 20% or 15%, however much the threshold is, it's got to come from somewhere. And if I'm working 70 hours a week, like many people are, and my children are being looked after by a stranger, then I'm sorry, but why? Because I'm going to be in the same position. It's impossible.
Well, unfortunately, there are so many people like you. We're indebted to you for you telling us your story, Rachel, and we're very sad for you. And thanks for being in touch. Thanks for letting us into your life. I hope it improves. You're listening to and you're watching Rachel O'Brien there. She's in Great Yarmouth.
Rachel, stay in touch with us. Would you do that over the course of this so-called year of the squeeze? Let us know if things get worse, if things get better, if the government have done anything to help you over the course.
What questions we should be asking the ministers,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And, that woman there, she considered not telling her children about Father Christmas because she was worried about not having money for presents, about building their children up and then having to say Santa hasn't been. Rachel, thank you so much. Thank you very much indeed.
Coming up after the break, we'll be talking about the Queen's royal residence at Windsor. It's getting a serious security upgrade. Will you still be able to visit? We'll have all the details for you in a moment. First, though, here's your Monday forecast. Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking cold to start in the east with rain and drizzle in the west. Let's take a look at the details. Well, it will be a grey and damp start to the week across southwest England with rain and drizzle, light winds and mild with a high of 12 Celsius.
A chilly morning in the southeast of England with patchy frost and mist. Once any mist clears, there'll be bright spells before cloud builds.
Across Wales, a cloudy and murky morning with widespread rain and drizzle. A milder start than yesterday with a high of 11 Celsius.
Here's the Midlands. Across the Midlands, a cloudy start in the far west with outbreaks of rain and drizzle. Further east, it will be a cooler morning with patchy frost and a high of 8 Celsius.
Okay, let's go to the northeast. A cold morning there with local frost, mist and hill fog. Once any mist clears, there'll be some bright spells for a time before cloud builds in from the west. A generally cloudy and damp start across southern Scotland, but a chance of the odd bright spell in the far east. Winds increasing through the morning, particularly along western coasts.
And here's Northern Ireland. A grey and cloudy morning, patchy rain and drizzle, though becoming more widespread through the day. A mild day with a high of 12 Celsius. It remains cloudy with rain and drizzle spreading eastwards throughout. Windy across the northwest with a risk of gales, and that's how it's shaping up for the rest of the day. Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good to have you on board. This is Eamon and Isabel. Breakfast on GB News, live on your TV and radio this morning.
From today, 100,000 critical workers will be given daily lateral flow tests. That's going to help keep essential services open. Well, let's bring in our East of England reporter, Amelia Harper. She joins us from Bedfordshire this morning's Fire and Rescue Service. Amelia, of course, firefighters frontline, absolutely crucial that they are able to continue to do their jobs. What's going to change from today for them?
Well, welcome to Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Service. We're standing between two fabulous fire engines that are on standby if they need to go out. So if anything does go off, we will have to adapt to that on live television. But yes, as you said, 100,000 critical workers are going to be sent daily lateral flow tests from today to try to alleviate staff shortages across the UK. Among those are police and fire control command crews. They are part of those testing, those needing testing, according to the Prime Minister. It says the UK last week topped over 200,000 COVID cases for the first time. But it isn't just people here, it is also people within border force, food processing and also transport, in addition to national infrastructure and security, some roles within electricity and also COVID testing, people working in warehouses and in surge labs. But to tell us more about how COVID affects emergency services and get your reaction to the testing, we're here with Matt Blanchard. You are the station manager here in Kempston. Just give us your reaction to the daily testing and what effect does it have if you've got staff that are off with coronavirus?
Good morning. It's really important for us to have the ability to be able to test our staff. Testing is an important infection prevention and control measure. It keeps our staff safe and it also prevents station outbreaks. So that means for us we can still provide our emergency response, so these appliances can go out and respond to incidents in the community. It's also really important that the public has confidence in us and knows that we're following the government guidance. So when we interact with them at operational incidents, we can carry out our prevention and protection work, and they've got the confidence to know that we're not going to pass on the virus.
How have you been affected as a force by COVID during the pandemic, and has this new Omicron wave changed anything for you?
So as a service, we've been affected like all other services across the country, but because we've got good infection prevention control measures, we've got risk assessments that are reviewed on a regular basis, that hasn't affected our staffing numbers too greatly. And so that's been really good for us, and we've not been affected so that a fire appliance couldn't respond to an operational incident, for example.
And you work in we're standing by one of these fire engines, you work in sort of COVID bubbles almost. Just explain how that works and what happens if one person takes one of these daily tests and finds they've got COVID. What does the rest of the crew have to do?
Of course, yes. So if you look at the crew cab here, we've got crews responding to an operational incident. They're in close proximity, they're within the 2 metres. We can't maintain that social distancing, so we'll wear face masks, we'll have the windows slightly open so we've got some form of ventilation to mitigate the effects. And obviously if somebody tests positive on a lateral flow, they'll follow the government guidance accordingly.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Matt, for your time. It's really interesting to hear your thoughts on this daily testing. There has been criticism because not all critical workers, as set out, say, at the beginning of the pandemic, are included in this scheme, and some have had trouble accessing home delivery tests because they haven't been available on the government website.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Appreciate that. Coming up, have you found yourself an online romance? Be warned, you may be being scammed, so we're told. We look into how after this. Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News. Novak Djokovic has won his appeal against deportation from Australia. The court ruled that the tennis star should be released after the judge found unreasonableness in how the border officials made his decision. But the immigration minister has reserved the right to exercise personal power to expel the star, and there are unconfirmed reports circulating that he has since been arrested. We are working to corroborate that at the moment. 19 people, including 9 children, have been killed in an apartment fire in New York City. 200 firefighters responded to the blaze in the 19-story building, which was started by a malfunctioning electric heater. Kazakhstan security forces have detained nearly 8,000 people after unrest in the country last week. Local government buildings were also briefly captured or torched in several major cities as the initially peaceful protests against fuel price hikes turned violent. The Home Secretary is set to introduce Martin's Law, requiring large public venues to make security preparations to deal with terror attacks. It follows the 2017 Manchester Arena bombing, in which 22 innocent people, including 29-year-old Martin Hett, were killed. Priti Patel says tougher measures are needed to protect the public from harm. A no-fly zone could be introduced over Windsor Castle as part of a review of security arrangements. An application's been made, but police say it is not in response to any specific threat. It comes after a man was arrested on Christmas Day at the castle while allegedly in possession of a crossbow. Michaela Yai Rodriguez has made Golden Globes history, becoming the first transgender star to win the Best Television Actress award for her role in Pose. There were no guests at this year's ceremony after heavy criticism of the organising body for a lack of diversity. Dark Western Power of the Dog and HBO's Succession were the big winners, picking up 3 awards each.
I'm surrounded by political commentators. On my left, Andre Walker. On my right, Joe Phillips. A very warm welcome to both of you as we go through the papers and things that are bound to get people talking. And Andre, you begin with the in-out argument, never over. Will Remainers ever accept Brexit? This is Andrew Pearce, and it is in his column in the Daily Mail today.
Well, as you know, I always say better out than in. But anyway, the Remainers in the Labour Party specifically are not accepting that Britain has left the European Union. I think that they're constantly attempting to be effectively a fifth column in favour of the European Union. We saw during the whole Brexit negotiations, Keir Starmer go off to Michel Barnier and try and assist him in backdoor meetings, something which, by the way, would have been a criminal offence in the United States of America to go and negotiate behind the back of your country. But still to this day, the architects of Labour's policy on Brexit, which was such a disaster in 2019, are still there and are still obsessed with things like the Northern Ireland Protocol, when actually they should be backing the traditional Labour voters in the north of England that they've comprehensively let down.
Mm-hmm. Now, Joe, you are a staunch Remainer, maybe one of these people that he'd be referring to there. What's your take on this?
Well, I think you know. I mean, I'm, as you know, I used to work for Paddy Ashdown, work for the Liberal Democrats. I mean, what is interesting actually that in the recent by-election, the North Shropshire by-election, huge 60% Brexit voting constituency voted Liberal Democrat. Obviously not an ambiguous party when it comes to membership of the EU. But I think, you know, the grown-up thing to do is to move on. There's no point in reheating that old battle again. It was too divisive, it was too ghastly. It was a terribly flawed referendum for which David Cameron should take all responsibility. But I think, you know, to a certain extent, I agree with Andre. It is only a certain extent. That the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn had such a ridiculous non-position that I think it's left people within the Labour Party quite confused. And they're going to have to address it. But I don't think, the public, although we Remainers feel sad and we can sort of slightly say, well, we could have told you this was coming or this was coming. I think there is nothing to be gained by saying we told you so. And I think people need to talk about, what's happening next and how we move on.
See, Joe would say to you, we told you so, there's nothing to be gained, she says, by that. But can you tell everybody else what you told them so, that you say, things are better? What is better?
Well, I think the first and most important thing is this is a constitutional decision. We now have the power to do things that we didn't do before. Joe complained earlier, and rightly, about the fact that Boris Johnson promised there would be a VAT cut as a result of Brexit. Now, that VAT cut hasn't happened, but now we can do it. We are able to control our borders. We are able to decide on our food standards. I have to say to you, people constantly complain, and this is the argument, by the way, about Northern Ireland and food standards, constantly complaining about the idea of American food coming into the United Kingdom. When we're hard-pressed financially, we now have the ability to import American food that was not going to be allowed by the European Union. But at the end of the day, there was always this... There's a particular presenter who always comes up with this really stupid comment. Can you name one policy of the European Union that you don't like? You never make a constitutional decision based on one policy. I wanted Britain to be an independent nation, and now, apart from our friends in Northern Ireland, we are.
But what happened, Andre, and you know this to be absolutely true, is that Boris Johnson and his pro-Brexit cronies sold a pack of lies to lots of people. Why is national insurance going up in April to pay for the NHS when there were buses driving around the capital promising billions each week?
You can't with any credibility sit there and say that the problem with the NHS at the moment is Brexit. There's clearly a pandemic taking place.
But you can ask why that money has not gone in.
This article by Andrew Pearce, I think... Now, you're a Liberal Democrat, right? I'm a Conservative. This is specifically about the Labour Party. And let's just be clear on something. Brexit is forcing wages up for some of the poorest people in this country. And the fact that we have been able to rely on, effectively, a slave economy, bring people in, you hear it all the time. Oh, well, I don't want to clean my own toilet. I want an Estonian to do it for me because these are the jobs that we don't want. No, we should be forcing up wages for our own people. And Brexit, I believe, A, has started to achieve that, and B, will go further. But that's why the Labour Party...
But that leads to this whole inflation spiral that we've got at the minute.
It does.
It does,
and there will have to be a correction.
And also, we haven't prepared for it by training people up to do the jobs that we were apparently happy to let other people do for us. Why are we relaxing visas because we're so desperately
if you saw what BP did when they caused that fuel crisis, where there'd been no difference whatsoever in the fuel supply, it was because they weren't willing to put up the wages of truck drivers. Time and time again now, the whole idea that what we're going to do is we're going to pillage and destroy working class England, and we're going to pop over to Estonia to replace people on low wages. Those days are gone. That's why the Labour Party should now recognise it.
It was a very sad interview. I know you saw it there with that lady from Great Yarmouth, Rachel O'Brien, who basically, her and her husband are part of the working poor.
Yeah, and they are. There is a huge number of people, and then that's why, the government's policies. You can't blame everything on Brexit, but you can have a look at government policies and you can say, why did you remove the £20 uplift on universal credit? Because it is for working people, and it's people exactly like the woman you were just talking to, who I thought she was so dignified and so articulate. And really, people should be listening to people like that who are working, who are trying to do the best, and they can't manage. And it is going to get a lot worse.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. Now, I want to ask you this, Andre. Why does Morrison's want to take away the use-by date from milk? I always, they say smell the milk. I say smell a rat. There's what is this about? Do you think they really care about the environment and food waste and whatever? Or there's just
well, in that case, if you want to do the conspiracy theory, let's be clear. Here's the reason they're doing it. Because Lidl has begun buying up all of the fruit and veg that looks a little bit wonky and selling these massive boxes for £1.50. What these supermarkets have now realised is the horrendous level of waste. I mean, they throw away all sorts of stuff on the basis of looks. There's some types of fruit, by the way, and veg, where 70% of it is binned rather than actually gets sold to somebody and goes to somebody's house. And I think now this is to do with market competition. I have to say, I do agree with one thing. I think we've become better at food labelling. And I'll tell you something else. This whole sell by and use by date thing completely confuses me.
Well,
because
it's ridiculous. It doesn't allow people to use their common sense. I mean, in the old days, some of us are old enough to remember before we had use buy and sell by dates, and you only threw the bacon
25
away.
you are.
Oh, bless you. The lighting is marvellous here. But you only threw the bacon away when it went green and slimy.
Yeah.
But, you know, milk, of course.
I'll tell you what I remember. We always talk now about recycling. I know this is a slightly different subject, but we always talk about recycling. I remember when I was a kid, there used to be the bloke who sold the fizzy drinks, the pop man.
Yeah. And you took your bottles
back.
back.
They didn't recycle. They washed the bottles. And you think, what we do now with these bottles is smash them to bits, melt them and remake them into something else.
Yeah, there's got to be a better way.
Anyway, I think it's a good thing.
Right, you think it's a good thing?
Yeah.
Tell me what you think about big screens in towns and cities that are used as adverts. Incidentally, some are being used advertising Isabel and myself at this
OK, well,
this
apart
very
from
moment.
those, which I'm sure are absolutely lovely, Eamon, according to a Freedom of Information request and reported in The Guardian this morning, electronic advertising screens in Manchester, each one of them uses the same amount of electricity as 3 households. Now, that is absolutely staggering. These were already controversial because they take up such a great space on the pavement and cause problems for people who with visual impairment, wheelchairs, pushchairs, etc. It is a big money-making thing for cash-strapped local councils. They get something like £2.5 million a year in rent from the advertising company, plus a proportion of the revenue. But the fact that they are so ungreen might make people think twice, even if it has got you and Isabel on.
Even
that.
There's probably not too many of them with us on it, but
I
anyway.
expect there are, but perhaps they could just maybe not have electric ones, just have pictures. Portraits, maybe.
Just like they used to do in India. You know, they used to paint them on the walls.
Yeah,
that would be superb. I'd love to see a life-size painting of you.
I wouldn't.
Like
I
Kim
wouldn't,
Jong-un.
That's exactly what it would look like, Kim Jong-un. Thank you very much indeed, Joe. Andre, always a pleasure. Thank you both very, very much indeed. So that's your newspaper review for the day. Let's go to Isabel.
Long nightmare for residents in Grenfell-like tower blocks may be coming to an end today as Michael Gove is expected to announce action on developers who've profited from building unsafe homes. Our London reporter Alice Porter is outside Grenfell Tower for us. And of course, Alice, that's where this whole crisis began in 2017 and it has been an ongoing and terrible saga ever since.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to believe that it's 4.5 years since the Grenfell fire took the lives of 72 people. And of course, the event itself was horrific enough, but what it also did was expose a massive housing safety scandal across the country. And it revealed that there was flammable cladding and other fire safety defects that were in tens and thousands of blocks across the country. And it's left many leaseholders in particular in an incredibly difficult position, unable to sell their homes, to remortgage them, insurance prices sky high. Now, the government had said that they were going to pay for the cladding to be removed from the tallest buildings, but as of today, it was going to be that the buildings that were between 11 and 18 metres high were going to fall to the leaseholders. But good news is for them, from today, we are expecting an announcement from Michael Gove, which will make it clear that the money has to come from the developers and not from the leaseholders. Now, that will be some welcome news to Paul Afshar, who joins me now. Paul, thank you very much for joining me. Now, you've got a flat that you own in Tower Hamlets. Now, just tell me, you discovered 14 months ago that had cladding and fire safety issues. Just talk me through what the last 14 months have been like.
Well, to be honest, it's been over a year of sleepless nights and real worry for two reasons. One, we know that the cladding on my flat is dangerous and needs to be removed, and we've got a grim reminder of the impact of cladding right behind us, unfortunately, with the sort of the real sense of danger and potential harm to life that it can cause. And number two is the anxiety around the bill dropping. Up until today, we were expected to cover the whole cost of cladding, which is going to be in the tens of thousands of pounds per leaseholder like myself. Hopefully today's announcement does remove a lot of that burden from people like me.
Now, today is very much good news for people who live in flats where there is cladding, but it doesn't address any issues regarding buildings which have other fire safety defects. And that's one of the main criticisms that's been levelled today by this announcement. So for you, is it slightly sort of mixed feelings about this announcement? Because yes, good news in terms of removing the cladding, you're not going to have to pay for it, but there's still lots of other important issues that need to be addressed in terms of your building.
You're exactly right. I think I would describe myself as cautiously optimistic for two reasons. We've got a cost from Parliament to fix the cladding crisis of £15 billion. So whilst today's announcement is a step in the right direction, we've still got a long way to go to actually cover the entire costs. But as you say, Alice, it's not just the cladding on the outside. It's a lot of fire safety defects, that were sort of brought in when these flats were built on the inside. And they can range from not having the proper fire alarm systems internally to alert people of a fire, or not having cavity wall breaks which prevent the spread of fire in flat blocks like mine. So, where those problems do exist, as they do in my building, we are still on the hook to pay for them.
And finally, this money that is going to be used to remove the cladding, £4 billion, Michael Gove is hoping he's going to get the developers who are partly responsible for this situation. He's hoping that they're going to cough up initially on a sort of voluntary basis. How optimistic are you that that's going to happen?
I actually think they will, in all honesty, Alice. The thing we've got to remember, is that the government actually give a lot of money to developers through public sector contracts. And Michael Gove has said, if developers don't cough up, if developers don't meet the expectations that we have of them, that is a tap that could be turned off. And I think that's actually the right approach. We've got to make them accountable. We've got to put them on the hook rather than leaseholders like me. And I think the government realises that. And pretty soon developers will realise that too.
Well, Paul, thank you very much for speaking to me this morning. I mean, as you were saying, this is an issue that affects hundreds of thousands of people across the country, many of whom will welcome the announcement that we can expect in the next couple of hours from Michael Gove. But for many others, this simply doesn't go far enough.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. The time is 11 minutes now before 9 o'clock. Nigel Farage, you see there on your screen, because Nigel's associated with the breaking news we're having this morning. You wouldn't normally associate him with sport and tennis, but world number one, Novak Djokovic, has won an appeal against this decision to refuse him a visa ahead of the Australian Open. And Nigel, you are with Novak's family.
Yes, that's right. We met in London a few years ago at the time of Wimbledon, and they're great people. And I've been trying to be as supportive as I can, because the case here, Eamon, is very clear. Scott Morrison, the Australian Prime Minister, says rules are rules. Well, quite. You see, the point is that Novak Djokovic met all of the criteria that were required by the Victorian state government to fly into Melbourne. On that basis, a visa was issued to him. And yet, on a sort of completely arbitrary basis, the federal national government of Australia had him arrested, put into a pretty grotty detention centre. Now, that came to court this morning, and the judge upheld the rule of law, which was that Djokovic had legally got into Australia and released him. So you would think that the family would be celebrating and partying, even though it's only 9 o'clock in the morning. But here's the thing. The judge made it very clear at the end of his summing up this morning that the Australian government does have the right, does have the ability, the immigration minister has the ability to overrule the court this morning. And so there is still the prospect that Djokovic could be arrested and be deported. And that is exactly where we are right now.
I don't know if you've heard or seen lots of reports swirling around on social media. We're hearing there's a heavy police presence in Melbourne outside the building where Djokovic has been meeting with his lawyers, some suggesting that he has subsequently been rearrested after winning his appeal. Has his family heard anything about that? And are you able to bring us up to date on what his lawyers are advising the tennis star?
Well, there is a breaking news report in the last sort of 90 seconds from a Serbian journalist who's spoken to the father. I'm actually with the uncle at the moment, but spoken with the father of Djokovic, suggesting that he has been rearrested. This is unconfirmed as of now.
OK, Nigel, OK, that's the very latest. Anything else you want to bring us up to date with?
Just that the family can't believe what's going on. I mean, is Australia a country that is based on the rule of law, or is it a country where governments can exercise arbitrary power? I mean, frankly, if that judgment this morning is overruled, what's the difference between Australia and a banana republic? And that is the state of incredulity that the family are in here in Belgrade this morning.
Well, Nigel, you said yourself that the judge stated in court that ministers had the right and were entitled to overrule that. So presumably it's completely legitimate and within Australian law. I just wonder whether or not, you say you're with the Cousins family. What are their views? Obviously, they're anti-vaccination, but there is, of course, an outspoken outcry about...
No.
OK, clarify.
No, that is wrong. That is wrong. You are quite right in saying that Novak Djokovic, one of the healthiest human specimens in the world, has chosen not to be vaccinated. The family are not anti-vaxxers or anything like. They're believers in freedom of choice, and it's just as simple as that. And so, no, to say the whole family are anti-vax is simply not right.
OK, and are you able to clarify a little bit of detail about some of the photographs that were published over the weekend? Because, of course, one of the transcripts that came out from the border interview that he did on Wednesday last week in Australia was that he had tested positive for COVID on the 16th of December, but he was then pictured in Serbia, I think in Belgrade, the following day amongst crowds. Is that breaking rules in Serbia?
I am going at 7 o'clock tonight to do a live interview with Goran Djokovic, the uncle, who is the one member of the family that speaks incredibly good English. And I'm going to put those points to him live, on air, here on GB News this evening.
And Nigel, do you think any of this has a fallout implication for Novak as a tennis player? How he will be perceived, how he'll be welcomed in other tournaments, whether the Australian Open or Wimbledon?
Well, of course, he's 34 years old, which probably means, even though he's in incredible condition, but probably means he's got a maximum of 4 years, let's say, left at the very top of the sport. If he was to finish up getting arrested today and barred from going back into Australia for 3 years, well, he's won 9 Australian Opens, but that could be the end of it. Quite how the British authorities will respond, I don't know. But you know something? If he obeyed the rules, the immigration rules coming into our country, it is unthinkable that our government would overrule it. And yet that's the prospect we're facing right now with Australia. So, yeah, this obviously has a very serious effect. As you know, there are these 3 huge stars all vying to be the all-time number 1 in terms of the number of majors. So, yes, this could, potentially it's a very, very serious setback for him.
Well, we look forward to your live interview tonight. What time is that one tonight, just to remind everybody?
It'll be 7 o'clock, and we will tonight go into this whole story in depth, behind the scenes, in a way that nobody else has yet done.
Nigel Farage, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. We look forward to that 7 o'clock tonight on GB News.
Now, stay with us. Up next, we'll be talking about the issues of the day. We'll be out and about in the streets of Monmouth. A little bit earlier on, we're speaking to a lovely lady, Nicola, I think her name was, talking about the value of bees and how important they were to her business. But, of course, they were able to cross the border during the restrictions of lockdown. But, those people who had businesses weren't able to benefit in the same way as the bumblebees. So how have you been affected? How has your business been affected by the last 18 months or so,
nice
2
to
years
get out and
of
about.
pandemic?
We do try and cover the country. It is in Wales today. It is Monmouth. Lily Hewitson, our reporter, will be there. Remember, this is GB News. It is your news. Your views are all important as to what makes it tick. OK,
That's
we're going to
right.
be... Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, after the break, we're going to be speaking to Jonathan Reynolds. He's the Shadow Business Secretary as well. We can talk to him about Djokovic as well. And we'll be talking to him about all the other stories of the day. But first of all, we can take a quick break. Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking cold to start in the east with rain and drizzle in the west. Let's take a look at the details. Well, it will be a grey and damp start to the week across southwest England with rain and drizzle, light winds and mild with a high of 12 Celsius.
A chilly morning in the southeast of England with patchy frost and mist. Once any mist clears, there'll be bright spells before cloud builds.
Across Wales, a cloudy and murky morning with widespread rain and drizzle. A milder start than yesterday with a high of 11 Celsius.
Here's the Midlands. Across the Midlands, a cloudy start in the far west with outbreaks of rain and drizzle. Further east, it will be a cooler morning with patchy frost and a high of 8 Celsius.
Okay, let's go to the northeast. A cold morning there with local frost, mist and hill fog. Once any mist clears, there'll be some bright spells for a time before cloud builds in from the west. A generally cloudy and damp start across southern Scotland, but a chance of the odd bright spell in the far east. Winds increasing through the morning, particularly along western coasts.
And here's Northern Ireland. A grey and cloudy morning, patchy rain and drizzle, though becoming more widespread through the day. A mild day with a high of 12 Celsius. It remains cloudy with rain and drizzle spreading eastwards throughout. Windy across the northwest with a risk of gales, and that's how it's shaping up for the rest of the day. Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Nine o'clock on television and on radio. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamon and Isabel.
Yes, you can find us on DAB Plus as well as on your TV, so stay tuned our way. However, you're getting our news this morning.
Now, in the last few minutes, the family of Novak Djokovic say the reports that the star has been rearrested are unconfirmed.
Labour is calling for business rates to be scrapped to help firms struggling to cope with rising energy prices. We'll be speaking to the Shadow Business Secretary in a moment.
How to set yourself up for a great week ahead. A mind coach will share her tips on how to get you in the right mindset. Well, good news and bad news for Novak Djokovic. He's won his case. Let's see what our viewers think about this. And first of all, if we understand this from Jay, first of all.
He said, that's opened up a can of worms. How many, in inverted commas, less fortunate people have been kicked out for exactly the same as him?
Here's Steve Quinn. So the fact that he was out and about when he was supposedly COVID positive means nothing. I reckon he's the most hated man in Australia.
Loretta says, natural immunity 1, 0, big pharma.
Les, justice prevails. Australian government has acted appallingly throughout and now have to pay all costs and release Djokovic immediately. But it's not as simple as that because there may be another twist from the state government on this. They may be appealing this decision.
Yeah, the court said, the judge, in handing down her verdict, that they were within their rights to overturn the judgment and they could well still send him out the country. So we're waiting to hear the latest on all of that, and we will bring it to you just as soon as we get it.
OK, here's what else is happening today. It's Monday, and with some of us dreading the week ahead, is there a way to embrace the week with a bit more positivity? It's a down day, Mondays.
It is, isn't it?
To be said. Not if you're watching us and all adorned in our bright yellow and orange around the place. But it's a nice thing. It's a
sunshine,
nice thing. You're very
radiating, just like Janie's always radiating sunshine.
Let's go to Janie Holiday. Janie is a mindset coach, and it's about changing attitudes, I suppose, Janie, and owning the day and the week.
Good morning. Yes, 100%. Why do we wait for the weekend to have the Friday feeling? Why can we not have it on a Monday? Well, hopefully my tips this morning will help. You're absolutely right. It is mindset. And really what I wanted to start by saying is that we have lots of thoughts, 60 to 80,000 a day. We're often not very aware of them. And we've got to be really careful that what we tell ourselves doesn't become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you start your Monday saying, oh my God, I've got so many things that I've got to do. I've got no time. The weather's awful. Like, I hate the winter, I'm never going to get things done. It actually becomes the narrative, your tone, your energy for the week ahead. So really listen to what you're telling yourself about the week ahead. And secondly, my other really big tip this morning is what I call the happily doing mindset. Look, as adults, we all have to do things that are a little bit mundane. I'm referred to as the Mary Poppins of the coaching industry. I'd like to think that I can help people make mundane things fun. You know, just because we've got these things to do, you don't have to be grumpy when you're tired. You don't have to be miserable when you've got things to do. So really look at how you are approaching the week ahead, and also let's be a little bit more light-hearted about our lives and indeed our Mondays.
Okay, so for a lot of people,
so what she's saying is you should be more Eamon. That's what she's saying.
Be more Eamon.
Yeah, you don't
hashtag.
have to be grumpy if you're tired, Isabel. Just remember that.
I'm not grumpy. No, not really. Janie, for a lot of people, it creeps in on a Sunday night, doesn't it? It's sort of, you know, the dread of the week ahead. And, you know, as you say, you've got to try and identify the little things that you can look forward to in the week or build them into your week.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a little saying, it's a bit of a cliche, but a Sunday well spent brings a week of content. So I like to spend a little bit of time on a Sunday thinking about what I want to put into my week. I always think it's a good idea to start with the fun stuff. A really big tip is don't save all the fun things for the weekend, but actually put them into a Monday evening. Why not have a movie and duvet night with your kids? Why not, you know, have a date night with your husband? It's all about looking at where we can put more of our, our focus so it's more positive. But also what we need to do is, I think, be really reflective week on week as to what works and what doesn't work. Last week, I didn't have enough time for me. I spent too much time on social media and not enough time in nature. So one of the things I started with as I looked at my week ahead, this as I'm talking live time today, is how can I get more time in nature, more time for me? I've got my non-negotiables of the week sorted, which is my workout, my escape time. So for anyone watching this, you know, really think about what's the most important thing. Start with the fun stuff. And it's really about time management and your choices and your boundaries. We're not very good at those, are we?
Well, it's funny when she says start with the fun stuff. I mean, I'm a great believer in social media, Jenny, that you mentioned there, that there are just some people, you know who you are, who just wake up wanting to be offended. I really feel sorry for these people.
Yeah, and I think social media is a really tricky one. It's just a habit, really, after all, isn't it? So if you are somebody that spends too much time on social media, you know it drags you down. Even if you're somebody that perhaps enjoys social media, but you're spending too much time on it. I said this last week with Isabel, you know, when you say yes to something, you are indirectly saying no to something else. A really big tip that I'd love you all to do as a little exercise today, actually, is looking at what I call creating your optimum week. It's the optimum week exercise. And think about what you want to include in your week that's fun, what you need to do, anything around relaxation, things that bring you joy. We all have the power to improve how we spend our time. We are the boss of our own lives. Sometimes we just get dragged through our week doing the same things that we do week in, week out. Why don't we change that today? And it really will change how you feel on a Monday as you head into a new week.
Yeah, you're so right. And I think it's really useful to learn the lessons of what stressed you out the week before. For me, I've had a really busy weekend and I don't feel like I've had any rest before I'm launching back into another busy week. So I said to my husband last night, next weekend, can we just do nothing? I just want to chill. I want to go for walks, minimal stress, ideally.
Do you get guilt about that, though?
Well, yes. I mean, because I had a lovely weekend, but it was just, I've come back and I'm like, oh, gosh, the house is a tip. And then I'm sort of all out of sorts. My sanctuary isn't how I want it to be.
I remember the last time I was in your house, it was a tip.
That's so not true. Stop spreading all these rumours.
It's a lovely house.
This is stressing me out more. But that's it, isn't it? It's about making sure that we learn from our mistakes and getting it right. Because you only have one life, don't you?
Absolutely. And I think, Isabel, what you've described here is what a lot of working parents struggle with, and indeed anyone who works, is looking actually at the weak points in your week. So you've just described how you've kind of launched into a Monday, having had the weekend. You guys are obviously really busy with this new show. I've learnt that I need to do things on a Sunday evening that just kind of wind me down. I kind of need to transition from my weekend with my kids, I've got 3 by myself, into being a mindset coach on a Monday. And then I also find at the end of the week, I need to do the same. So it's looking for you, Isabel, great example of just looking back at last weekend. What could you do this weekend? And it's also going through this with what I call the growth mindset. It's trial and error about what works. So whenever life feels, pressured or overwhelmed, or you don't feel you've got that work-life balance right, just try some new things and you'll soon find what works and what doesn't.
And the other one that's an absolute shocker for starting the week, and Eamon, you can relate to this, is not being able to sleep on a Sunday night. What is that? Why is it that the night before the first day of the working week, when you really need to get your early night in, it just evades you? It's impossible. Any tips?
I was worried about the FA Cup tie tonight.
Were you?
I think that's
what was on your mind? Yeah.
That's what it was. Do you know what was on my mind? It's really weird, Janie. This is strange.
Yeah.
I was lying for at least an hour in bed, and I was dictating a text message to her, and she replied. I was able to read her replies to me. This wasn't real. This was just going on in my mind, this whole text message. And then
what did the text message
sent you,
say?
Well, can't go into that.
Oh, crikey.
I sent you a sound clip, and then you...
We do send voice notes quite a lot.
And then I would go, just phone me, Isabel. Just phone me instead of all this texting. But my whole brain was involved. It was a work-related item with you. Incredible.
There you go. We've got to chill. We've got to chill on a Sunday night. Janie, always lovely to see you. Thanks for pepping us up. We right our wrongs and make sure we've got our tips all in place for next week. Thank you so much. Janie Holiday, Mindset Coach.
Thank you. Today, the Labour Party will announce new measures to address the rising energy bills hitting not you, but businesses across the country, as new party analysis revealed that 1 in 4 businesses have been affected by high gas prices. They proposed a £600 million contingency fund to help them, but where is the money going to be going? Earlier we spoke to Rachel O'Brien. She's a mother. We asked if she's had to choose between eating or heating. Have you ever had to choose between eating and heating, for instance?
Yes, absolutely. Do you turn the heating on? Not sure. You sat there and you're thinking, let's put the kids' dressing gowns on. Let's put a blanket over them as well. And I mean, my eldest is 2. And she said, I'm freezing, Mummy.
Well, that's the reality of rising utility prices. But the Shadow Secretary of State for Business and Industrial Strategy, Jonathan Reynolds, you've got to think of the whole picture and how everything filters down. So Rachel, who we were speaking there, she's the consumer, and you're talking about the generators of all of this. What do you plan to do?
Well, good morning. Yes, and I think that clip was very powerful about the situation people are facing. We laid out at the weekend, and we're continuing to talk about it today, a package of measures that would give relief to bill payers and households, so some relief for everyone, at least £200 off their energy bills, and for those people in most need, like you've just spoken to someone affected by this, as much as £600. Now, what we include within that is a package for business, because big businesses that are big producers, so steel, ceramics, these are sectors which are very heavily exposed to rising gas prices themselves, and clearly we need to find a solution for those businesses as well. So it's an overall package, fully funded. I'll take you through the components of that, but it's for households, for those most in need, for everyone, but also for British businesses very much affected by this spike in wholesale prices.
OK, well, do take us through the costings then, because this is a back of a cigarette packet kind of calculations that I've done. £600 million billion divided by the 800,000 businesses affected equals around £750 per business. Is that going to be enough?
Well, look, first of all, the overall package is worth £6.5 billion, and the funding for that comes from three sources. First of all, there's the increase in VAT, which is already accrued to the Exchequer from those higher wholesale prices. Second of all, our existing taxation from the North Sea is increased because of those increasing prices. Now, we're saying to raise an additional just over £1 billion, have a one-off increase in corporation tax, a windfall tax, if you like, on those North Sea operators. Now, that's been done before. Margaret Thatcher, George Osborne, Gordon Brown all did something similar. So we're taking some of that revenue and using it for the benefit of the economy as a whole. That's for households, but yes, for businesses too. Now, we'd work with sectors as to where that £600 million would go to, but crucially, that should be aimed towards those energy-intensive businesses that are most affected by this. They're in a real position. We don't want a situation where they're shutting down production with the impact on employment that would have, because they simply can't cope. You're right to say there will be a longer-term solution required for those. So, for instance, for steel, we've said we'd like to joint fund pilots around the use of hydrogen to replace coal in steel generation. We would match fund investment projects to see electric arc furnaces introduced to those steel foundries that don't yet have them. So yes, you need a longer term plan, but right now we need a solution to the cost of living crisis for households and businesses, because we're talking about an increase here, say for households, of up to £1,000 in their energy bills, which will have a huge impact on inflation as well as that increase. I mean, I couldn't stress enough how serious this situation is.
Yeah. Are there any other big companies, big industries that you would have your eye on who have done particularly well throughout the pandemic? I'm thinking of communications companies, for instance, tech companies, delivery
Amazons
companies.
of the world, yeah.
Well, the case for the North Sea companies is a very specific one. So we're one of the most competitive jurisdictions in the world for extracting oil and gas, very, very profitable operations in the North Sea. And about 50% of our gas does come from domestic generation. Now, that's a good thing. Those jobs, that industry, that domestic supply is a good thing. But as the CEO of BP himself has said, right now the situation with that spike in wholesale prices, he's called it a cash machine for his business. And so because we've got that very competitive situation, we can use the additional unexpected profit bonus they otherwise wouldn't be expecting to receive. A little bit of extra taxation, but the benefit for the economy as a whole is very, very clear. And I think I couldn't again stress enough just how important it will be to take some action to mitigate the cost of these rises in gas prices.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be the big story of 2022. No one can argue with that. Look, Jonathan Reynolds, whilst we've got you, I have to ask you about a very important story developing this morning. You'll have heard, of course, from Australia that Novak Djokovic won his appeal in court this morning to remain in Australia. Well, we're hearing reports that his family are saying that he has subsequently been arrested and he could still be deported out of the country because of his non-vaccinated status. What's your view on that? Should unvaccinated players be allowed to break international rules, the rules of the country that they're visiting?
No, I think everyone should get the vaccine, and I think that should apply to you whether you are an international athlete or not. I mean, these individual situations relating to individual immigration decisions for other countries are for them, and I don't have the details. But specifically on your question on the vaccine, everyone should get it, and it shouldn't matter what your status is, it should apply to everybody.
And should Novak Djokovic be welcome to play in Wimbledon here in the summer?
Well, I would just again expect everyone, no matter who you are, to be subject to the same regime, and the case for getting the vaccine is extremely clear, and I don't understand what any objections to that would be.
What about talking about regimes, the previous Labour regime and Jeremy Corbyn? You've been outspoken on Jeremy Corbyn in the past, and you'll have heard these reports that he's plotting to form his own breakaway party. So here's the question. Do you think that Jeremy Corbyn should remain excluded from the Labour Party, or there would be a theory that cancelling Corbyn would do more to damage Labour? What's your view on that? What's your take?
Look, Jeremy's future is really down to him and the situation between him and the Chief Whip in terms of how he responded to that very serious report on anti-Semitism in the Labour Party when he was leader. There are no political considerations as to whether he should come or go. You've just got to play it straight and do the right thing. Now, he hasn't himself said he's going to do this, so I'm cautious it would be for Jeremy to make any statement about his future. But it is for him, and it's for his decision going forward, and there's really, I think, no more to it than that.
Okay. Jonathan Reynolds, appreciate you talking to us today, outlining your plans for big business and a windfall tax on North Sea gas. Jeremy Reynolds is the Business and Industry Secretary for the Labour Party. Thank you very much indeed.
Coming up, we're going to be back with our Welsh reporter. She's out and about in Monmouthshire, on your doorstep, finding out what you think about the biggest stories of the day. Don't go anywhere.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
One of the things on the show we want to encourage is to get out and about, hearing your news and hearing your views.
Yeah, and we've been out on your doorstep in Monmouthshire. Lily Hewitson is there for us this morning. Lily, what are people saying about the big stories today?
Yes, good morning, Eamon and Isabel. I'm in Monmouth this morning, which is a beautiful market town just on the border between England and Wales. So it's just 2 miles from that border. Now, we've been talking to people about that border in particular today, so people who live and work here in Monmouth, and what it's like being not too far from completely different restrictions and how it works for their customers on a day-to-day basis. Now, I'm at the Savoy Theatre, and it's beautiful, as you can see. This is the oldest working theatre in Wales, and I'm joined by Chris now this morning to have a chat about a couple of things. How are you doing, Chris, this morning?
Hi.
Thank you so much for having us on your doorstep. Now, you've just finished Panto season here, haven't you? What was it like over Christmas here at the theatre?
Oh, well, it was extremely challenging because, of course, in the week prior to when the Panto should have started, the First Minister made the announcement that we're going back to alert level 2, which intrinsically meant social distancing. And most of the professional pantomimes in Wales closed on Boxing Day when those regulations came in because they couldn't cope with the social distancing. And we thought initially that's what we were going to have to do too. But we had another think. And what we decided to do was that in the 2 days prior to Christmas, we would completely tear up all our seating plans here. We would tell people that we were going to reseat them in new performances, and they would have to like it or lump it. If they wanted to see the pantomime, that's what they were going to have to do. So we reduced our capacity from 370 down to about 140. We put on a couple of extra shows. We managed to get people in that had previously booked for other shows, and we just got it on during that week. We managed to survive on much lower numbers. So we got it done. The show did go on.
Well, Well, that's good to hear. A big effort indeed. How confusing has it been for customers and for you personally as a business right by the border, having those different restrictions? Because you've had a bit of backlash, haven't you, from customers who've not wanted to show the COVID passes, for example?
Oh, yeah, well, it's extremely confusing and it's caused us a lot of problems. I mean, on November the 15th, the Welsh Government introduced the COVID pass for theatres and cinemas in Wales. And as you said in your introduction, we're only a couple of miles from the border. Well, in fact, we're only 5 miles away from the nearest cinema. So you've got a situation where you can go and see some of the same films that we put on, only 5 miles away. You don't have to provide a COVID pass. You don't have to do the track and trace. And it's a much smoother and easier experience. So why on earth would you not want to go there? And that applies to 2 or 3 other cinemas around here in Hereford or in Gloucester as well. So that's provided an additional challenge. And of course, on the other side of the same coin, we occasionally show films here which they don't show in some of the other cinemas, and therefore we do attract people from Herefordshire and Gloucestershire to come and see films here, and they're not expecting to show a COVID pass because that's not a regulation that's required in England. So we've had a number of occasions when people have come in here, in fact it happens more or less every day to be honest, where people come in here not expecting to show a COVID pass, and then we have a melee. Either they have to try and find one on their phone pretty quick, or in extreme cases they have to turn around and go home. And we've had quite a bit of, well, 1 or 2 nasty experiences as a result of that. The most drastic being a man who said he would blockade himself in the doorways that we're standing in now, because he said, if I'm not allowed in to see the film, then I'm damned if anybody else is going to be allowed in to see the film. So he was threatening to blockade the whole building. Fortunately, his wife told him not to be a silly boy, and they went off and went home, and they weren't able to see the film. But we've had extreme cases like that, 3 or 4 of them actually since, as though it's our fault that the regulations have been brought in. We argued against them at the time because we're not sure where the scientific evidence comes from.
We're going to have to wrap it up there, though, Chris. Thank you so much. And it sounds very confusing. And that has been the general consensus here in Monmouth today from all the businesses that I've been speaking to, that it is very confusing living and working on the border because of those different restrictions with just a couple of miles in between each other.
Well, from a centre of entertainment there, that old cinema, to the entertainment that's happening here now with Hannah Hope, assistant showbiz editor of The Sun on Sunday, and the Globes. Tell me about those, Hannah.
So the Golden Globes happened last night. A bit of a damp squib, no ceremony, no celebrities, no red carpet. But we did have some British winners, so I'm always up for celebrating that. Could be an early nod towards the BAFTAs and the Oscars. So Andrew Garfield won Best Musical Actor for Tick, Tick, Boom. We also had Kate Winslet for Mayor of Easttown, and Kenneth Branagh got a gong for Belfast.
Yo,
you saw the film Belfast,
yes.
Didn't you? What do you think of it?
Well, it's a sort of mirror of sort of my life. Branagh's Belfast was my Belfast. We're the same age. And it's very emotional. It's quite emotional. We rare people in Belfast to leave.
That's
so
true.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Yeah, there you go. Jamie Dornan, we obviously see him in quite a serious acting role after his 50 Shades of Grey kind of.
Yeah, but he's on the BBC
role.
at the moment in that Australian Outback.
The Tourist.
Thing. Yeah.
Very good. So hoping for great things from him.
Sky are hoping for great things from Danny Dyer.
Yes.
Tell us the news there.
Indeed. So big news over the weekend. Danny Dyer is leaving EastEnders after 9 years, playing stalwart Mick Carter. I mean, he's been a legend on the soap. He's been really good, a bit of a national treasure, looking after the Queen Vic. And now he's leaving the show to go over to new projects at Sky. We all know.
Are they saying what these new projects are?
No, but we think it's probably a lot of drama, maybe like 3 or 4 drama series. It's going to be a lot of money, a lot more dough than the BBC. But what I can tell you guys is that the BBC, a source I've got there, has said that he's going to have a dramatic last year. They're going to get their money's worth out of Mick Carter for this year. He's going to reunite on screen with Kelly Bright, who plays Linda Carter, his on-screen wife. And they're not going to kill him off, but they're going to get him to act his little socks off.
Oh, they're not going to kill him off. That's always a smart move because you can always bring him back in when the money dries up at Sky.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, a bit of football news here as well. Jack Grealish invited me to a party, not me. Party night. Where was this party and who was it with?
So this is with Towie star Chloe Brockett, actually the daughter of Lord Brockett, who old Etonian, and she met young Jack in Mykonos a couple of summers ago, and indeed he did invite her to party with him at his villa, and they did have a bit of a saucy evening together. But this is interesting because he actually does have a partner, Sasha Atwood, and he's got form. It's a bit of a hat trick.
Oh no.
Isabel likes a bit of Mykonos, don't you?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Yes.
I didn't know where you were going with that.
And I'll be reporting on you. I will say goodbye to you there, folks. Hannah, thank you very much indeed. From Isabel and I, thank you for watching this Monday morning. We'll be back tomorrow to do it all again.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking cold to start in the east with rain and drizzle in the west. Let's take a look at the details. Well, it will be a grey and damp start to the week across southwest England with rain and drizzle, light winds and mild with a high of 12 Celsius.
A chilly morning in the southeast of England with patchy frost and mist. Once any mist clears, there'll be bright spells before cloud builds.
Across Wales, a cloudy and murky morning with widespread rain and drizzle. A milder start than yesterday with a high of 11 Celsius.
Here's the Midlands. Across the Midlands, a cloudy start in the far west with outbreaks of rain and drizzle. Further east,